planned on exhibiting one or two more warning signs this week before, quote, finally doing this.
I think I'll do just a couple of disconcerting things in front of people here at the office. Maybe give them a day or two to take action through the appropriate channels. But if that doesn't happen, then I'm going through with it.
The fully unhinged Redding, who plans on, quote, making this thing happen sometime next week, claims that despite displaying erratic and worrisome behavior around the office for the past few months, his actions have gone completely unreported by his coworkers.
I definitely talked about my frustration with life in general, and I even discussed my fascination with all sorts of violence. But that still didn't throw up any red flags. We'll see if anyone catches on.
Mike? I don't know him super well, but he's nice enough. He's quiet and he keeps to himself mostly, but I'm sure he'll come out of his shell. Just a matter of time.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, day 4 of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Of course, by the time you're listening to this, it will be day 6 of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, because on Free Talk Live, we air 2 other shows on Thursday and Friday nights in order to help them get more coverage and to alleviate the pressure that was caused by Ian, of course, being in prison. I want to take the time real quick to encourage you again to write Ian Freeman. You can do that at Ian Freeman 34755-509, Unit JA. That's P.O. Box 879, Ayer, Massachusetts 01432. It was very easy for me to memorize all of that. For one, because I wrote the last half of it a lot. And the only difference between mine and Ian's registered numbers is 2 digits. Mine was 34741 and his is 34755. So it's very easy for me to remember that. So go ahead and write him a letter. It would be tremendously appreciated. But I'm joined now by Constance, who last year you were I don't understand how it works. So I'm glad you're here so you can clarify. There's an organizer, but then there's also someone who seems like they're managing the events. So how does this exactly work? Because last year I thought you were the organizer, but I think Dennis Pratt was the organizer. And what were you last year?
Well, last year Dennis was the producer, which is what it's called, and I was the co-producer. And it really varies depending on who steps up to take the roles. But I've actually I was running registration for about 5 years, and over those 5 years, I learned a lot about what makes the operation side of PorcFest happen. And helped kind of guide it to become what it's becoming, and the reset of the COVID years, I helped it go. And so I've been kind of suggesting to Carla and Dennis that I become an operations manager. And so last year I became the operations manager as co-producer. And then after Dennis retired, they didn't have a producer, and I said I would do it, knowing my strengths and my weaknesses, though. Olga Sorens, she volunteered to help last year, and as we were getting to know each other and working together, we realized that she would be a great co-producer for me, and she has done all the programming, so all the speaker selections, minus you and Dana Martin, who I specifically asked for, have been all Olga's, and also she handles all the sponsors because I'm also a sponsor. So to avoid conflict of interest, I don't deal with anything with the sponsors other than the one I purchase for Independence Realty Group.
That makes sense. And thank you so much for, requesting me be a speaker. I didn't know that had happened until you mentioned it recently, because I recall, I think it was around February or so, when I realized I was going to be out in time for sure to attend the festival, that I think I asked Bonnie to get in touch to line up a speaker spot for me. And apparently that was already something that was on your mind anyway.
Yes.
So that timing was really awesome. I just thought I had requested it, and you guys were like, yeah, of course, sure, we don't mind.
Well, when you wrote me the letter from prison, which was very touching, and I every time you say, you should write the prisoners, I feel bad because I don't do it nearly enough. But I did... I did already, as soon as I found out you'd be out by PorcFest, I was asking Olga if we could have you on as a speaker.
Well, thank you so much. It was enjoyable. There was a hang-up yesterday.
Yes.
That caused a bit of a delay. And I haven't heard an update about what happened.
He's fine. It's a known medical condition, and
Okay.
he was actually recording. He was back recording when you finished your talk yesterday.
Okay, was this Phoenix? Because I had
No.
Okay, I didn't
It's
think
not
so. I didn't
Phoenix.
think he had any issues like that. But yeah, and
Yeah.
then he interviewed me afterward, and he seemed totally fine. Which I
Right.
love the post-interview thing as well. That went really well. The speech I don't feel like went super great because I mean, first of all, that happened, and then it was kind of difficult to recover from that and get back into it, but I did. And the questions from the audience were great. It was surprisingly well attended despite everything that had happened, and it was enjoyable and obviously fantastic time. Just not going to be in my like top 10 speeches that I ever gave. But
Well,
that's-
you're just getting back into it after
Yeah.
a break, right? So
Yeah.
you should give yourself some slack.
Fair enough. That was definitely on me, though. So you mentioned that you wanted to get on to talk about differences in the Porcupine Freedom Festival, differences in PorcFest versus previous years.
Correct.
So I was remarking on this during the interview that overall, PorcFest hasn't changed a lot, like the overall nature of it. I mean, it has in the sense that there used to be pork rangers down there at the entrance who would demand your wrist bracelet, and it was a bit more locked down in the 2016 to like 2019 eras.
Correct.
But that shifted, and like the signs change, and the individuals themselves who come each year changes, and the sites change a little bit. But overall, the Porcupine Freedom Festival carries on in much the same way as it has the last 20 years. So I do see lots of changes, to be clear, but I would have a very difficult time pinpointing what those changes are.
Well, that's wonderful because I'm actually trying to model this PorcFest after my first in 2013 and my second in 2014. I saw a very professionally run PorcFest when I was here. And so I loved that aspect of it, as did Olga she wasn't here, obviously. Her and Jason have only been together 3 years. They had their second year wedding anniversary, I think. I'm going to get the dates wrong. They can tell you. I think it's third year. Yeah, I'll get it.
Okay.
Here during PorcFest. So I was telling her about when we started, because we started the week after PorcFest last year. We started organizing this one. What we used to get, in the registration bags and things like that. And she's like, I want to do that. Like, I want to make this really, really nice. Like, I still want it to be a camping festival, but I want people to have a print schedule so they're not relying on posted signs. And so we put together, mainly that was her endeavor, her and Miranda NMX, who did the volunteering talk yesterday, did a tremendous amount of work building that magazine and program. So that's one of the changes. But I wanted it to feel like the PorcFest of before. I also volunteered under the Paxtons, and they were great. And I wanted to take the great things that they did and bring those into this PorcFest. And then also I volunteered under Dennis and the decentralization. So I wanted that to continue. And I wanted to kind of mix it all together to make a PorcFest that people could have their hubs wherever, so that the software upgrades we're still working out kinks here in
I'm sure
in the North Country with all of a sudden all the bandwidth to porcfest.com. We've upgraded servers and moved things that I don't understand as a not tech person, but it's working now. So everybody here in the campground can pick their campsite, put their events up. You can edit events. I know you guys are on there.
Okay, great.
So anytime you want, you sign in. I think you had somebody else who declared your hub. So
most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I just don't know who it was.
I can look that up for you if you want to add an event, or I can add you as a user to this particular site. So if you decide you want to do an event tonight at 8:00, you can add it.
Okay.
And obviously it's not going to get as much attendance as the things that went into the print schedule, but there is that option. And so that I really took the spirit of what Dennis was trying to do with his software and made it more so it's less on the organizers to maintain the events.
So PorcFest in 2019 tried something similar with the Eventify app, and one of the issues that we ran into was that I could create users and allow them to authorize it, but we didn't even want that much because I'm lazy, right? I just wanted people to be able to make their own events, very similar to that, without any input from me whatsoever. And Eventify worked out pretty well, minus having to do a lot of stuff on the back end to make it possible. I remember the Porcupine Freedom Festival, though. I always just make that distinction so that the viewers know when I mean Fork Fest versus Pork Fest. On the radio, they sound very similar. But I remember Pork Fest tried something similar a few years ago, several years ago. I think this was when the Paxtons were here. They used an event manager that was similar to Eventify, and I don't remember now what it was called.
Eventbrite?
I think that may have been it.
Was it the one that started with a W? There was Woova or something that was used once. I don't.
And it was good. It was okay. But back then, the internet available here was significantly worse than it is now, and you could spend an hour trying to load what was going on. Now those issues no longer seem to exist, and the PorcFest schedule is widely available to everyone, and you're using different software that doesn't track people's location and all the other stuff that the previous software did. So those have been very positive changes. It's great to see so many events happening at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It is a bit difficult to keep track of the schedule, right? Like, I knew I was speaking at the pavilion at 4 o'clock on some day. I didn't remember what day it was, and this was like last week, and I tried to find it in the calendar, and I had to flip back and forth between Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday several times before I was able to spot myself in there, because there's just so many events.
It might be that you were looking before the interactive one was back online, which it's now back online. So now you can just click the tab for the week view, search for your name, and your event would pop up.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, that's part of the snags of doing this year, first time, is that what we did while it was down is we downloaded all the events and put them up in the similar style as Dennis had last year, but because they hadn't been entered into his form, they'd been entered into our form, the locations and repeating events did not transfer correctly.
That would have been it then. You're absolutely right, because it just showed Aria de Mezzo there. And more recently, when you look, it says Aria de Mezzo behind enemy lines, a year in federal prison, or something to that effect. So, yeah, only the speaker itself seems to have imported. So, okay, that explains a lot then.
It was just whatever field it was. So if the field was your name, the title was your name, that's what transferred. If the title was only the title without the speaker, that's what transferred. But it was just a stopgap measure, because the print schedule we offered to a Hubs to be Hub sponsor. So again, I've been listening for years about a lot of the complaints and trying to find free market solutions to them. So Hubs, back when it was Agora Valley, they didn't like being upcharged to be in the prime real estate, so they moved, which was a great solution. Like, it's a market solution. They took over the campground. They're like, we're not paying this upcharge.
Right.
And so and Dennis didn't want an upcharge either. He didn't want to be in charge of any of the Hubs. So what we did is we offered the Hubs that want to pay extra the ability to be in the print magazine and have a little perks for $500. And I think 6 Hubs took advantage of that. So they're listed in the print schedule.
So who Hubs? I didn't catch that. Who did you say took advantage of that?
About 6 Hubs.
Okay.
So we put all the sponsor packages online last year. So there was very clear what you were going to get with your sponsor package, and people could pick from those. So that happened, and part of that was because we knew we needed to pay for a print book. So things that cost money, we charged a fee to offset those.
Right, which is reasonable. And I did not look through the print book yet, but I did see the bag, obviously. And I love the fact that the bags have zippers this year. That's very convenient. I did hear one person remark that they were sad that they didn't get free gold this year. And that must have cost the Goldback people like $40,000 or $50,000 to do. I mean, there's no way that could have been worth it.
What I heard is they actually made money being here.
I don't doubt that at all. But
yeah, they might have cost them, but in the end, the investment was worth it.
Right. And that's more or less what I would expect. Goldback got here, and it just blew the festival away. If I'm remembering everything correctly, cryptocurrency used to be very widely accepted here, and that was what I used every time I was here when I needed to make a payment of something. Now, it's true that I did get prohibited from using cryptocurrency for close to 3 years. However, in that time period, Goldbacks came around, Goldbacks started coming, and they became more and more popular. where now I see far more people using Goldbacks than cryptocurrency. I haven't seen anyone using cryptocurrency to buy a product here because it's just so much easier to whip out these little 3 pieces of gold or whatever and hand it to someone versus pulling out your phone, scanning a QR code. There's so much more convenient. There's so much, I don't want to say better, but in person-to-person transactions, it's really hard to beat the Goldback.
Yeah, I just pulled mine out of my pocket.
Yep.
And I have them folded and tucked in my pocket. And my friends who saw me do it are like, what? Like, everybody treats Goldback so nicely. I'm like, it's currency. I'm going to put it in my pocket. That's what I do with my dollars, too.
Absolutely. And they hold up very well. Previous years could lose the plastic laminate that was over them, but you could send them back to Goldback. And they would replace them for you because they have since fixed that issue. Apparently, they got too hot and sweaty or something. But it's great to see them here, and it's great to be at the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
And this year, our sponsor, I should, as producer, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. It's not Goldbacks themselves; it's Alpine Gold. So there is a distinction there. Last year it was Goldback, but this year it's Alpine Gold, which is more an exchange than the actual manufacturer of Goldback.
Right, and they have a brick and mortar store here in New Hampshire that accepts Goldbacks as well.
Correct.
And they're unfortunately not the first to do that. I think the first may have been Lancaster House of Pizza here. And that was, I think, in 2019 or 2020. No, it would have been after that. Either way, it doesn't matter. Ben and his partner came up here and they talked the Lancaster House of Pizza people into accepting Goldbacks as payment. And he's really persuasive. He's really good at that.
I believe that, yeah.
But it only lasted the one year. And that's because, there's no one here outside of PorcFest who was going to use those. It's the same thing we had with the restaurant at the Cabot Inn right down the street, who used to take cryptocurrency. Well, they're out of business now. But they took cryptocurrency. But every year we would go there, they would tell us, we don't remember how to do this because we haven't done it since last year. So can you guys re-show us everything? We'd have to update their software. So the last time I checked with Lancaster House of Pizza, they were just cash and card only, unfortunately. But it was amazingly successful in the first place to get this random pizza place in Lancaster to willingly accept them.
And I wonder what the exchange rate was when they first started accepting them. Because just from last year's PorcFest to this year, Goldback is being traded for 5 Federal Reserve notes.
Yep.
Versus last year's 4.
I don't remember what they were at that time, but when they were first here, that very first year, because Ian was the one who brought Goldbacks here. I don't know where he finds these things, but he did. And I was the first person to price something in Goldbacks, and that was cups of wine that people could help themselves to, and they could just leave a Goldback, and that would be the end of it. And they were $3 a piece then. Actually, it was about $2.50, but we all rounded up to $3 then. So they've close to doubled in market value since the Goldback first came to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And obviously this isn't because the gold itself has doubled in value. There's a lot of processing and a lot of work that goes into creating these things that creates an upcharge to it. But they're easily worth it, and I can't stress enough that I was asked by a Japanese interviewer earlier, well, what are you guys going to do if the Goldback company goes out of business? And my response was that would have no impact whatsoever on the value of the Goldback.
No.
Because the gold is already there.
Right.
You already have it in your hands. So the company could go under right now. If anything, it would just make the Goldbacks more popular.
I was going to say, you mean they couldn't just keep printing their currency forever? Oh my gosh, what would we do?
So is there anything happening this year that you'd like to promote? It would be aired. Well, no, I guess that wouldn't work because this episode isn't being aired until Saturday night.
We have. I want to promote the live stream because
that's been a huge development.
It's actually Phoenix and his videographer crew offered that to us, and we're like, let's try it. So that'll be available for purchase even after. Obviously, it won't be live at that point, and then we will be uploading the videos. So I could do a shout out to my panel at 4, which I'm talking about. My panel at 4 is on prepping, and why prepping in New Hampshire is the only place it really makes sense.
So so there is an actual live stream of the presentations and the speeches. Where is that at? Because
if you go to porcfest.com/tickets and you just scroll down under the tickets, there's the place to purchase the live stream.
I see. So it's not just on being streamed to YouTube or DLive or Odyssey or anything.
No,
okay. That's understandable.
Yeah, and it's $29 for the week. It's not like gonna break the bank. We did last year have people that set up an FM low frequency. I think I'm saying this right. You can correct me. I'm not the radio person. Repeater here in the campground, so people could listen and live and hear the RFK without disarming. And those folks, I think, are coming back. I haven't seen it set up yet, but they may have decided that with the live streaming for $29 with video, it wasn't worth doing. But I love that idea. That was taken by somebody who saw the need, saw that people wanted to listen to RFK Jr. speak and did not want to disarm. So they just contacted me, said, this is what we're working on. And I said, that's great. Here are other people that are interested in that. I connected them in a Signal group and they made it happen.
That's awesome.
I hope they're back. I haven't seen it, but I've been a little busy. So
I haven't seen it either. So I have to ask, because I was gone throughout most of the last year, what happened with the Body Freedom Village?
So I will talk about Body Freedom Zone, which is what we have this year, and we don't really like the word zoned, but people are calling it zoning, so we'll take it. I guess they're embracing that. I thought we had made it through PorcFest with the updated rules fairly successfully. Dennis and I gave each other a high five. We're like, we solved it. Like the nudists were happy to put on clothes in the common spaces, and they were happy to be naked on their spots, and everything's good. You know, like market solution for the win, property rights for the win.
That was 100% my experience last year. No one that I knew complained about it or had an issue with it. The nudists were happy. The non-nudists seemed to be happy.
So that is not how it went down after PorcFest. There was a huge blow up on Twitter and Signal groups and just pages and pages of people ranting about what property rights mean and where eyeballs can look. And I can't even tell you. I can tell you that Olga and I put our heads together and we decided to clarify that if we own the roads, we want visual barriers between places where people are going to be nude. You can still topless is always allowed, by the way. Like that was a clarification people wanted to know. But if you
would assume so, because I see topless people all the time.
Right, and it's not. There's nothing illegal about it in the state of New Hampshire. And, I also breastfed 4 kids, so I'm a lactivist as well. But if you wanted to do a completely nude Free Talk Live from this spot, I would just ask you to put up tapestries so people around you who were not expecting to find nudity at this part of the campground wouldn't stumble upon it. You could put a sign up that said, only go in if you want to see nudity. So you still own your campsite. We want to make sure that people on the roads know what they're experiencing. And part of that, we moved the Body Freedom folks to the back corner, and we had wonderful organizers who stepped up and helped with that, who are actually part of the management team, and we officially put nudity as a welcome guest on our map. Now, I know a lot of people were like, oh, the organizers are banning nudity, and we did ban nudity from the common spaces last year because we now have a nudity activism happening, and we also have families that are not there yet. So we are trying to balance the needs of a bunch of people. And so far, it's been a super positive experience. And we had a clothing optional rave Tuesday night in the pavilion. Again, the signs were posted. This is clothing optional. And people knew not to go in if they didn't want to see nudists.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. Fantastic Porcupine Freedom Festival, as always, and I look forward to it every year, this year more than any other. So thank you, Constance, for sitting down with me. So obviously, go to fsp.org, I believe is the website, to find out more, or porcfest.com to find out more about the festival. We are here, and there's more coming up.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Sally Patterson with a look back at some of the week's top stories. People in North America, India, Europe and other parts of the world sweltered under brutal heat waves this week, with meteorologists saying climate change is at least in part to blame. In New York City, the heat prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather became a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann reports.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe.
Meanwhile, India's health ministry said there have been at least 110 confirmed heatstroke deaths in the country since March. Weather experts say this year's summer season has been exceptionally harsh. Shiroshi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Government records show that India recorded over 40,000 suspected cases of heat stroke this summer. In the past week, Delhi's hospitals noted an uptick in the number of heat-related deaths. Health officials also observed that most patients brought in were people from poorer socioeconomic backgrounds who lived and worked in the open. Experts say that it is the poor that bear the cost of severe climate change since they have no protection against the unrelenting heat or biting cold. They say a prolonged summer like this one should be classified as a natural disaster.
On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dissolved his war cabinet, set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas on southern Israel, amid growing political turmoil as the fighting in Gaza continues. Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7 to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity.
US President Joe Biden this week outlined what he called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan allows around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the country. Biden spoke at the White House.
These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country.
And pop artist Justin Timberlake was arrested on Tuesday for allegedly driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. Timberlake has pleaded not guilty and is scheduled to be back in court next month. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, Day 5 of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. We are here the entire time, so you can come down and hang out with us. We are at RV46. Of course, you will also likely hear us doing the show, recording it, because we don't do it live here. A lot of people assume we do it live. They ask about that. Like, the technology that's involved to do a radio show live on site, it's not worth it. Yeah, we have the capability. We just don't care enough to, because it requires already about 5 hours a day to record the show and get it, produced and all of that.
Well, if it was like raining at the time we needed to be live or something, that would be really bad.
Also a really good point, because we wouldn't be able to do anything about that. We couldn't be able to pause. There's a lot of background noise, a lot of kids running around, dogs barking, that sort of thing. Yeah, they do that. Well, mine does it because she wants to tell people hello and get their attention. And it's hard for me to break her of that. It's probably impossible at this point because it works. Mm-hmm. So she gets that little dopamine hit. She barks at people and they go, "Oh, pretty girl." And they come over and they pet her and she gets rewarded for barking at them. So she just does it again and again and again. But Bonnie and I are joined by, I just put your name away, by Sterling Lujan. And you are a Monero enthusiast. Is that right? Because so am I, obviously. Love Monero. So tell us a little bit about why you prefer Monero or some other privacy coin over the big names like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ethereum, may it rot in hell. Introduce yourself. And
Ethereum's a privacy coin? I didn't even know that.
No, it's not.
Oh, the big names. My bad.
But it sucks in so many reasons. I mean, I don't want to get into it again, but the basic reason is that you cannot trust the Ethereum blockchain. They've hard forked it to roll it back before in order to undo some transactions, and therefore any transaction you make on the Ethereum blockchain, they can just decide on a whim. They want to undo it, and you're screwed over.
If someone they really like needs that done for them?
Yeah. This is what caused Ethereum Classic to come into existence, and I love Ethereum Classic, but it's doing about as well against Ethereum as Bitcoin Cash is doing against Bitcoin. Which is to say, not very well. I think it still exists.
Fair.
But anyway, so tell us about yourself and welcome back to the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Thank you so much, Aria. And it's Aria, that's how you pronounce your name,
yep,
right?
That's right.
Cool. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting talk. So back in 2009, I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I came into the Liberty Movement. Back in 2009, I got arrested for possession of MDMA and cocaine, about 500 pills of MDMA and about 30 grams of cocaine.
Goodness. Okay, yeah, they'll throw some charges at you over that one.
Yeah, they were threatening me with 30 to 40 years in prison. I was lucky and the case didn't become federal because the drugs didn't travel outside of state lines. But I had my house raided by the state police in Texas and the state marshal.
Oh, and in Texas, they're really serious about that stuff.
Extremely, yeah. Uber conservative, where they absolutely loathe drugs and everything that any drug stands for. So I was able to get the smarmiest, greasiest attorney that I could find and wrangle a deal to where I got deferred adjudication probation, which in Texas just means that when you finish your paper prison sentence, that you won't have a conviction on your record.
That's the same thing as a plea and abeyance. That's what the feds call it.
So what?
Plea and abeyance. So after 6 months and I didn't get in trouble, then I had nothing on my record. If I got in trouble in those 6 months, it would have been permanent.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you also didn't end up with federal charges, because that would have been a lot harder to get an attorney to beat that. Obviously, even at the state level, and you obviously did not beat it. You had to face some punishment. Did you end up becoming a felon or anything? Hold on, I don't even want to ask that. Don't answer that question.
You can, and I'm happy to answer that.
No, but don't, because I am not allowed to have contact with felons.
Okay.
So don't answer that question, please.
Sure.
I should not have asked.
I don't even think there are any here.
Yeah, I'm assuming you got hit with a misdemeanor. So, I mean, it got whatever it was you said. But anyway, so Monero, are you here with the Monero Talk people? You mentioned earlier that you have a talk coming up today.
Yeah, I have a talk that I'm going to share with Matthew Roach, actually, and we're going to have a discussion.
Oh, you said Matt, and I didn't know if that's who you meant.
Yep.
Cool.
So to
Matt
answer,
loves Monero.
Yeah.
And so do I.
He's amazing. This was the first time I've met him, but we've been friends on social media for a long time.
He used to be a regular on this show.
Yep. Awesome guy.
Yeah, he's great. So to answer your question directly, I'm actually relatively new specifically to the Monero community, at least in depth. I'm mainly focused on just generally the privacy and anonymity space, because the organizations that I work with are focused on what's called developing a network state, right? Or what's called an autonomous political formation. It's basically a technological approach to creating a governance platform for people to build applications and to exit the United States or any other jurisdiction and to live of their own volition. So we don't have to get into all that. It's a lot of details there, but long story short,
well, it may be a lot of details, but I didn't I'm not sure I understood the overview. So it's like taking sort of citizenship and voting and putting that on a blockchain.
So it's a little different than that. Okay, so I'll mention one person in reference. So the word was coined by a crypto entrepreneur, the ex-CTO of Coinbase, Balaji Srinivasan. He wrote a book called The Network State. And in his vision, and we'll go back to some of the more particulars, in his vision, it's a community that comes together, that shares values, usually what he calls a one commandment, one singular value, and then they can choose to crowdfund territory at a physical location where they live. But it doesn't have to be land-based. It could be cloud-based as well. So it's being able to exit and choose your own governance service or non-governance service. It's whatever type of collective or social community that has some type of rule set, like a decentralized autonomous organization, very similar to that concept, except this is specifically applicable to also living on the ground if you want to, and having some kind of shared like natural law or polycentric law, some type of setup like that. And the technology stack that helps facilitate this usually has some kind of token or governance asset and a treasury that the group manages together. So it's really taking DAOs to the next level. And
a DAO, for those listening, is a decentralized autonomous organization. I believe the Dash cryptocurrency was the first ever DAO, but there have been several since. I think Shapeshift finally became a DAO, which allowed it to basically restore itself back to where it used to be, which has been wonderful. But I don't want to get into Shapeshift again because we've talked about that repeatedly. But you mentioned anonymity and privacy, and these are difficult things for people to grasp. For one, they think they have privacy, and yet they use public Wi-Fi networks. They use SMS two-factor authentication. They use Facebook, Twitter.
They use Bitcoin.
And countless number of apps that track their location. So what would you say to those people who already believe they have privacy, but in reality they don't, and they don't even know how much privacy they lack?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is a lot of these people also not only do they not realize they don't have privacy, but they probably don't realize that they're actually being surveilled a lot of the time. At very least, their metadata is being collected by government agencies, and we've seen this in programs like PRISM that Edward Snowden, people like that, brought to the surface. But I would say if they haven't heard that idea before, that they're being surveilled, they're being watched, and all their information is just publicly available, they could attempt to start at least using services and products that provide and allow for more privacy and more anonymity. So, like Bonnie mentioned, if you're using Bitcoin, you're 100%. Everything you do on that blockchain is completely transparent. It's what in the space we call a solar punk technology, where it's completely transparent and available for anybody to review. Whereas a cryptocurrency like Monero is anonymous on the base layer, right? So you can take steps to at least gain more anonymity. But there is something I want to point out that's really vital to this. I don't think that there's a such thing currently on the internet as complete privacy and anonymity. Even if we are as private and anonymous as possible, there's a problem usually with OPSEC, right? This idea of operational security. So if we make a mistake online at some point, like we have a Gmail account that we created years and years and years ago, that could actually dox us at some point down the road, even if we're maintaining as much privacy as possible. And the reason I mention that specifically is that's what happened to Ross Ulbricht. Unfortunately, he had great privacy and anonymity in his work with the Silk Road, but he had accidentally doxed himself on the shroomery.org years ago, and an IRS agent actually discovered that email and then traced it back and then got a subpoena from Google and then figured out who he was, essentially. So my whole thing, and just by the way, a little note though, free Ross, so free Ross, free Ian, free all these people who are political prisoners. But that's the case of what happened with Ross. Full privacy is really hard to achieve, but the best thing you can do is try your best to protect yourself and to leverage as much OPSEC as you can.
There's one TikTok that I follow, and I know a lot of people hate TikTok, but I find it to be an engaging platform for content. But this person, you challenge him to find your location. You take a picture of yourself or just your surroundings. You don't even have to be in the picture. And you challenge this person to find you. And even if it's just a picture of a wall somewhere or a random sign or an empty parking lot, with amazing ability, this person manages to find out exactly who you are, where you're located, and what your name is, and who your family members are.
Well,
just by a blank picture that you posted to a TikTok.
You mentioned Gmail, and the other day my friend was showing me how easy it is to find information on people, and he was like, here, he didn't show me what he was doing at all. He's like, I'm not going to ask for anything. All he knows is my first and last name. And in like 5 minutes he said, okay, what's blah, blah, blah at gmail.com. And I was in shock because that was an email that I made a Neopets account with when I was like 12.
Yeah, there's not much privacy. And Google, of course, is one of the worst privacy offenders. Facebook as well, X or whatever that spoiled welfare whore is calling his platform these days. But they're terrible for privacy. Google will gladly turn over your information to any government that subpoenas it. And they have this process where they're supposed to have a warrant, obviously. But there was an audit a few years ago of these, and most of these law enforcement agencies would just message Google and say, hey, we want this person's records. We're with this police department. No warrant, no proof that they were with the police department, and Google would say, okay, yeah, here you go, and would just turn over all of that information. You cannot trust Google or Facebook or Twitter to protect your privacy, or TikTok or any of these others. A lot of people have railed against TikTok, accusing it of being, this Chinese attempt to control and find out information about Americans, but like TikTok is not going to really help them or hurt them with that. If they want to find out everything they want to know about you, there's nothing stopping them. If you have a Facebook, they're going to find out everything there is to know about you.
So I tried to look on my phone really fast to find the name of this book, and it's not coming up in my text with this person who told me about it, but I have a friend who basically believes that like even Monero is subject to Chainalysis, and there's this book written about it where they talk about what the FBI and people did to like basically use Chainalysis even with Monero, and I thought that that's impossible. So what do you say about that?
Yeah, I don't really think it's feasible in most cases to use blockchain forensics to de-anonymize Monero users. I think there are some edge cases. For instance, if you KYC'd at a centralized exchange and if that exchange happened to offer Monero, most don't, and that kind of gives you an indication of how decent Monero is in terms of privacy. They could probably de-anonymize you, but it's really hard. And I know this from experience because I have seen how blockchain forensics tools work. I know how Chainalysis, they have a tool called Reactor, and Reactor is their investigatory tool. And what they can do with that is they usually trace UTXOs, and that model is really specific to in terms of its transparency to Bitcoin Cash, primary tech like that. But they can trace a lot of different any blockchain that's transparent. They can typically trace Ethereum as well.
They can, but the good news on that is because of the Crypto 6 case and the Daubert motion to suppress evidence or whatever it was that my attorney Richard Guerriero filed, in order to use blockchain analysis in a federal courtroom, they would have to become open source. They would have to prove that the technology works, and the only way to do that would be to reveal the source code, and these private companies like Chainalysis are not willing to do that. And that was among the reasons that the Daubert motion was what's the word I'm looking for?
I thought they agreed with it. Yeah, the judge accepted
it was granted.
Their argument. Yeah,
granted is the word I was looking for. Yes, and in addition, the FBI was not allowed to call themselves an expert.
Yeah. So she, Ian's lawyer went up there and said, "So what you're saying you do? Would it be possible for me to log into that account and do the same exact thing?" And she was like, "Yeah, I guess so." And he just like kind of mic dropped because that is the definition of not being an expert. Right. If anyone can go do it.
So there were some small victories in all of this, but luckily Chainalysis, to my knowledge, it doesn't work on Monero. There was a glitch in at least one Monero wallet. I think it was the Cake wallet, a number of years ago that de-anonymized them, but it was a glitch in the wallet and not in Monero itself. So that was unfortunate, but these things happen, and move your crypto to a different wallet in the time being, and then move it back when the issue is fixed.
Yeah, 100. And I'll add to that. There's only one. Actually, the main blockchain forensics company that made a claim that they could de-anonymize some Monero transactions was actually CipherTrace, which I believe is now owned by Visa. The company is, but no one ever came out and have explained how they can do that. So I do think there's an element where these companies and agencies, along with their government cronies, will come out and tell people that we can de-anonymize these transactions, so that they create a chilling effect to try to prevent people from using the technology for certain reasons. So I don't believe that it's possible to trace Monero, at least on most use cases.
Yeah, the only book I can pull up that might be it is Tracers in the Dark: The Global Hunt for the Crime Lords of Cryptocurrency.
Andy Greenberg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that book.
That could be it. I don't know. So my friend always references it to me, and he's like, "You're not safe with any of them. You're not even safe with Monero. This book explains how the FBI has traced it." I wish I could figure out exactly what book.
Yeah, Greenberg in his book did talk about how they might be able to trace certain anonymized coin transactions, but he didn't really offer any details. I know that he mentioned that they don't just use blockchain forensics, of course, as we all know. They use that as an adjunct with other typical investigatory tactics to try to get at people. Right, a lot of the folks they found on that were involved in the Silk Road, that were the drug dealers, etc. A lot of this was just sort of typical investigatory tactics and then in pretending to be other drug dealers or being involved on the sites.
Plus, if you're on the FBI's radar, I mean, it's not terribly difficult for them to get spyware on your phone. And if you have a Monero wallet on there, then you're de-anonymized. But they didn't de-anonymize Monero; they de-anonymized you in that particular scenario.
A lot of people don't even know that when you walk into a Walmart, their cameras, they're there like, ostensibly for just security and anti-theft. Well, they're actually recording the way you move and stuff, and they can sell that.
And they use facial recognition, and if you've been caught stealing at one Walmart, some of these Walmarts will come up to you and hey, you're not allowed here, you were caught stealing somewhere else. But you mentioned a chilling effect, and Bonnie and you were talking about this before we started recording because we saw this happen in Keene. There used to be a large number of cryptocurrency accepting businesses. I gave the crypto tour a number of times to people who visited, where we would just walk down Main Street in Keene and I could point out, these people take crypto, and so on. And there was 10 or 15 people, and then I would point out, well, we can drive within a quarter mile of here and we can find an additional 10 or 15 places. People after the raid would come and they were like, hey, I heard you give the crypto tour, so show us around. And I'm like, there's nothing to show anymore.
People got scared.
Yeah, those people used to take Bitcoin. Those used to
They used to have an ATM. They sold it.
Yep. They got rid of it after the raid and refused to put another one in, and so on. And it's all because of the Crypto 6. Of course, this was here in Keene, New Hampshire, where the FBI, it was crypto mecca for a long time. Forbes, it was The Verge, wrote an article referring to it as crypto mecca, but so did several other places, going back several years.
Yeah, well said, Ari. That reminds me of another concept that I think is really occurring in the U.S. as the government starts to clamp down on crypto. And by the way, this is a whole full-on, headlong assault on the cryptocurrency ecosystem where all these privacy developers are being prosecuted, right? Samurai Wallet guys got arrested recently. They're going to be going on trial. In the Netherlands, they convicted Alexei Pertsev. He's going to have to spend prison time now. And we've had other cases that are more lower level or people don't think about a lot, like Roman Storm and Bitcoin Fog and these other cases. But what's going to happen and what is happening is this idea of human capital flight or brain drain, where the smartest people, the developers, the engineers, the iconoclasts, the thinkers, they all start to go to more hospitable grounds to develop their technologies, and so that brain drain happens in the U.S. and it's been happening, right? We know that Eric Voorhees left. He was originally had his company in the U.S. and he went to Crypto Valley in Switzerland. A bunch of people have been going to Dubai and Latin America. So the U.S. is actually harming its own technological process by attacking crypto so aggressively in the United States.
And it's crazy to me that Trump brought that up. He may not know all the, he may not be able to say it as eloquently as you just did, but in his speech to the libertarians, he said, he's talking like he would to Republicans about like manufacturing companies, but he was like, Bitcoin's going to be made in the U.S. from now on, and we're not going to let Biden. Yeah, it's funny.
So he doesn't understand the technology, but that's fine.
But he's on the right track, I think, because he's like, we're not going to let.
He's stupid, but his heart's in the right place.
And I really think Vivek Ramaswamy got this idea to him, so it's the only reason I actually kind of like Vivek now, because before this he said like, I don't like Bitcoin, I don't trust it, criminals use it, and now only since this campaign he's been taking Bitcoin for his campaign, and he's also been saying like Bitcoin's going to be made in the U.S. and we're not going to be attacking Bitcoin and hurting the future of Bitcoin in America. We're going to be ahead, and it's just so stupid. You would have to hate the American people to want to scare away something like Bitcoin ingenuity, because it's like that needs to happen here.
Well, it's
and not other
basically a
places.
statement of fact that the politicians hate the American people. I mean, we're peasants to them. We're slimes. We are their cattle, and they rule over us, and they want us to jump when they say jump and to bow when they say bow. And this technology, cryptocurrency in particular, sound money, allows us to take control of our finances and free ourselves from the tyranny of the federal government. So obviously they hate it. This is one of the reasons that the Security Exchange Commission went after LBRY and Jeremy Kauffman, who are huge advocates of freedom and privacy here in New Hampshire. And it's the same reason they went after Coinbase and Binance and several others.
Roger Ver.
Samurai Wallet.
Yep. Roger most recently.
Yep.
Was it the SEC who went after him? Because
I thought you were saying America.
No, I was referring to the SEC.
Oh, yeah, I'm just making...
They're the main ones who have been doing this over the last few years. I say this as someone who got hit by the FBI as well. So it's a multi-pronged attack on cryptocurrency just across the board, and it's designed to create a chilling effect. It worked. LocalBitcoins.com shut down. So how can you acquire cryptocurrency privately these days? Your only real option is to either find someone and buy it from them directly, or to mine it yourself, which is not going to get you a terribly lot in cryptocurrency. A lot of people do mine Monero, but over the course of a year, you might get one Monero out of that on a standard PC with a really good graphics card.
Wow.
Yeah, you nailed it. And to add to the chilling effect piece in terms of privacy, a lot of the either privacy projects or anonymity projects have also started to close up shop. So local Monero was also a really popular exchange for people using Monero and wanting to do trades, but they're closing up shop as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's a huge hit.
Yeah, it's a massive blow, yeah.
While I was in prison, the largest cash by mail seller on local Monero was arrested and taken into federal custody. So that's the same reason that localbitcoins.com stopped offering in-person cash transactions. And of course, it's the same reason that localbitcoins.com ultimately ceased operations. I mean, when all of your customers are getting arrested, you kind of want to stop having customers.
Yeah, they might have went and got, the FBI might have went and threatened them too, for all we know.
Also true. They do that sort of thing all the time. Hey,
I mean, they showed up at just random customers of Ian's threatening them, not just the ones that actually were getting scammed by a third party other than Ian, but they went up to people who were not getting scammed and were just good customers of Ian's and knocked on his door, and some of them told him, like, hey, has this happened to me?
So you mentioned privacy and the importance of privacy. A lot of people feel like if you want privacy, you must be doing something illegal. What would you say to those sorts of, because they're very common. What would you say to those sorts of people?
There's this really interesting meme or trope going around in the privacy community, and it's this idea that privacy is quote-unquote normal, right? Privacy is embedded in a lot of aspects of our lives, and we expect it, and we anticipate it, and we want it actively, right? All of us, it's kind of a funny, if not a little bit of an odd joke about it, but a guy named Kieran who works for a company called... Oh, what's the name of it? Slipping my mind right now. Anyway, he says that we all go to the bathroom every single day. We close the door. We expect privacy during those types of moments. So why shouldn't that also be extended to our online and our cyber life as well? And it absolutely should. It should be expected. So the idea that everything that you do that's private is criminal and that you have nothing to hide is a complete dereliction of everything we think about in terms of our own self-sovereignty, our own liberty, our own dignity and decency.
And just being human. It's just a normal human thing, like you were saying. Like when the telegraph first came out, the people who ran the telegraphs were mad because the people were coming up with code words so that way they weren't having their messages read.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us, Sterling. We are here at the Free Talk Live site, RB46. We're here for the rest of the week, so come down, hang out with us. There's more coming up. It is Free.
Thank you, Jode. I appreciate you taking up this issue.
Berto, if a man ain't cooked crisp on the Hellfire Desert, ain't he ought to be left on his own?
Well, right, Jode. Immigrants are desperate for a better way of life.
We need the strongest of these crude backward browns to keep us all alive. And see, the ones that can swim the Rio Grande, too. Berto, you swum that border river to get here, ain't you?
Jode, not all Mexicans came here by swimming the Rio Grande.
No. I got sympathy. I crossed Huron Lake in the barrel myself using hands as paddles. Lived off the carp. What jumped at me? Now, you swum that river, ain't you?
No, Jode, actually, I was born here.
What you know about hard work? Ain't never swum no river.
Many immigrants, they
I say you ain't never knowed a man till you seen his teeth. Show him your teeth. Too many teeth rotting out shows you're dishonest in the mind. You got strong manful teeth, Bartol. I apologize.
This is the Onion News Network.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. You're already listening to LRN.FM, whether via our 24/7 satellite feed, online streaming audio, or our video feeds. LRN.FM's content is available in multiple ways, but what if all you have is your phone and no data connection? You can call our listen line at 360-398-4482. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 360-398-4482.
You're listening to the latest episode of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Sally Patterson with a look back at some of the week's top stories. People in North America, India, Europe and other parts of the world sweltered under brutal heat waves this week, with meteorologists saying climate change is at least in part to blame. In New York City, the heat prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather became a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann reports.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe.
Meanwhile, India's health ministry said there have been at least 110 confirmed heatstroke deaths in the country since March. Weather experts say this year's summer season has been exceptionally harsh. Shiroshi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Government records show that India recorded over 40,000 suspected cases of heat stroke this summer. In the past week, Delhi's hospitals noted an uptick in the number of heat-related deaths. Health officials also observed that most patients brought in were people from poorer socioeconomic backgrounds who lived and worked in the open. Experts say that it is the poor that bear the cost of severe climate change since they have no protection against the unrelenting heat or biting cold. They say a prolonged summer like this one should be classified as a natural disaster.
On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dissolved his war cabinet, set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas on southern Israel, amid growing political turmoil as the fighting in Gaza continues. Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7 to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity.
US President Joe Biden this week outlined what he called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan allows around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the country. Biden spoke at the White House.
These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country.
And pop artist Justin Timberlake was arrested on Tuesday for allegedly driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. Timberlake pleaded not guilty and is scheduled to be back in court next month. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, what explains the collapse in support that opinion polls in the UK are indicating for the country's governing Conservative Party? In the latest BMG research poll for the iPaper, support for Rishi Sunak's party has tumbled to just 19%, compared to 42% for the opposition Labour Party. There are still 2 weeks to go in the UK's general election, so obituaries for the party of Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher are premature. But Andrew Neil, chairman of The Spectator, is offering one nonetheless.
One of the remarkable things of Brexit, whether you were for or against it, it's broken the Tory party. The Brexiteers won, the majority were Conservative, but getting it, doing it, living with it afterwards has broken them. It's exhausted them. It's taken away all their bandwidth. They had no time. And then, of course, the pandemic came along and that made it doubly difficult. But it's a bit like the Corn Laws in the 1840s. The repeal of the Corn Laws destroyed that Conservative Party as we knew it, and a new one had to rise from the ashes. Brexit has destroyed the Conservative Party as we've known it.
He spoke to Spectator TV. Nipping at the Conservatives' heels in the polls is Reform UK, the party now led by one of the principal architects of Brexit, Nigel Farage.
A reminder of some of the week's top stories. People in North America, India, Europe and other parts of the world sweltered under brutal heat waves this week, with meteorologists saying climate change is at least in part to blame. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dissolved his wartime cabinet amid growing political turmoil. And pop artist Justin Timberlake was arrested on Tuesday for allegedly driving while intoxicated. That's your roundup of news making headlines this week. Sally Patterson reporting.
Following the news this week that recording artist and industry magnate Bob Dylan would be laying off 2,000 workers from his Muscatine, Iowa songwriting factory in an effort to streamline his music-making operations, The Onion spoke with veteran factory worker Travis Felton, who received a pink slip earlier today.
I've been working on the lyric assembly line for 25 years now. Punch in each and every morning, make sure the words are complex and poetic. And yesterday, the foreman calls me into his office to tell me that the company is reducing headcount. They're giving the whole rhyming section the boot. What Mr. Dillon and the other suits don't understand is that here in Muscatine, songwriting is all we have. And we've been doing the best damn Dylan songs in the world for over 50 years, and now they're trying to take that away from us. I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. Well, I guess I could see if they're hiring over at the Tom Petty factory in Hurstville. Lord knows I hoped it'd never come to that.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and we are here on site at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. We're actually now in the mobile studio because we attempted to start recording a few minutes ago up at our main site, RB46. But as it happens, it's PorcFest, and a live acoustic performance began just on the other side of the street from us.
It was frustrating, not that it's anyone's fault. It's not like, oh, they did that to annoy us. It's just frustrating because it's like, okay, well, we can't do this now, and we kind of have a time frame, so let's go to the mobile studio.
Yeah, usually people are really good about respecting the fact that we do the show there because we've been doing it there for so many years.
I think that's kind of the problem. Like the LPNH people, like most of those people are like first, second year PorcFest people.
Right. So they don't really know that that we're there and this is what we're doing and there's a reason for it. And obviously we only need we don't even need silence. We just need you to not turn your amplifiers up to full volume because he did have his acoustic amplified and it was loud. And that's something I've seen a couple of times this year with the Porcupine Freedom Festival is that people don't seem to respect sound boundaries. And obviously, I know if you've got music at your site or if you're doing a show at your site, you're going to bleed out into other sites, and that's totally fine. However, you don't have to put your equipment at full volume in order to do your thing.
LPNH is also the site that people were mad at last year because it was past 10 p.m. and they were just still partying and playing loud music. Maybe not 10 p.m., maybe later, I don't know.
It's definitely frustrating when it happens because, if everyone turns their stuff up to full volume, then no one can make out anything, and it's just a cacophony of noise, and it's unpleasant. The karaoke people, several aisles down from us, they're on the first row, and we're on the third or fourth. When they do their karaoke, our microphones pick it up. And that creates all sorts of issues for a number of reasons. One, they might be singing a song that has large amounts of swearing in it.
Is that Autonomy's?
Yes, it is.
I sang Lana Del Rey for the first time at any karaoke there today. Or
really?
Yesterday.
Was it an enjoyable experience?
It was really, really great. I was sitting there eating a burger with Ricardo, who's filming the Crypto 6 documentary. And first he went up and sang that song. It's come on and get your kicks, because you don't got money if you look like that, do you, honey? I don't know.
I've never heard that one.
I feel like you might recognize it. He sang it just like the guy. He did really good.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, fine, I'll do one. So I did Do in Time, which is a Sublime song, but I did it in the style of Lana Del Rey's cover.
Wow, I didn't know she covered a Sublime song.
It's really, really good.
All right, yeah. I mean, OTEP, I don't want to really call them a metal band because I don't like OTEP because their singer is she's a giant bitch and she's mean to other female artists because they're not lesbians, basically.
Weird.
Yeah. She really went at it with the Butcher Babies a few years ago, accusing
I thought
them.
they were lesbians.
Butcher Babies? No, they're actually not. In fact,
like I only know about them from you. I just thought that I heard you say that for some reason.
I was hoping they were lesbians, but one of these singers, Heidi Shepard, she's actually married, I think, to their guitar player, who's a dude. And I don't know what's going on with the other girl. And you have to pay attention to them on Facebook and Instagram in order to find out that those two are even dating. Like Lacuna Coil did, they find it better to not make it public.
Wait, the Butcher Babies are dating each other?
Yes, one of these singers is dating the guitar player.
Oh, I thought you were saying, okay, never mind. No. I'm caught up now. I thought you were saying one is married but also dating the other girl.
No, that would be fantastic, right? And for me as a fan, that would be fantastic. But no, that doesn't seem to be the case. They're just friends. In fact, one of them is extraordinarily intelligent and creative, and they have this song called Kurova.
And the other one's stupid.
I don't know if she's stupid or not. Maybe. I don't know, because she is blonde. But the other one, they made this song called Kurova, which is Russian for cow. And I was like, why did they write a song called Cow? Well, there's this animated video that came out of the Soviet Union called Kurova it's the most unsettling video I've ever watched. It's like 14 minutes long, and it's made with this weird art style that involved blown glass, and it's very weird and very disorienting. And it's just unsettling to watch. And you'd have to check it out for yourself for me to be able to explain it. But the song makes references to the Soviet Union and to capitalism and workers and communism. And it's all about this cow the entire time. To even know that this obscure piece of culture exists, to write a song about it is wild. But she also runs this grieving counseling thing where like it's okay to grieve all the time. I don't really know anything about that, but it's intriguing, and at some point I would like to look more into it, but I haven't. I don't remember how I got into all of this, of course. I am wearing a Butcher Babies tank top, but that's not what got us into
it. Was
the
karaoke.
topic.
We were talking about karaoke on the first row, getting all the way to the third or fourth row that we're at.
That's right, and it was about OTEP. Yeah, they did a cover of the Lorde song Royals.
Oh.
A metal version of it, and it's actually not bad. I like it better than I like Lorde's version because Lorde's version is pretty basic musically.
I was thinking I looked like Lorde today because it's humid.
It is very humid today at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It's both humid and rainy and a little bit chilly, so I'm not too upset about being here in the mobile studio. We have to get a ceiling fan installed in here.
Hot in here, cold out there.
Yeah, because there's a lot of equipment in here, certainly, and it generates heat. And apparently we are in the mobile studio. I don't know that we really talked about that. This is the pioneering journey of the mobile studio. This is the first time Free Talk Live has actually been done from the actual mobile studio.
So basically, right after the raid, Mark bought this for the Shire Free Church and donated it to Free Talk Live.
Yeah, and it was very expensive. Which makes me a little sad now because, we went to prison and we sort of lost track of it. And we sort of lost control of it. And the thing was brought here this year without any input from anyone at Free Talk Live. And, that's kind of a sore point for me. And now one of the doors is broken. And we're going to have to pay to get that fixed. Luckily, Jay Noon is here and he's more than capable of fixing it. But, it shouldn't be his responsibility and it shouldn't be our responsibility. It broke sometime Tuesday.
I can make call and do it for free.
Okay, well that works. But why weren't we notified that our door was broken, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy. But I expect better.
I think people don't know it's ours.
They don't seem to, and I'm going to talk to Mark about this, but might as well just talk to you about it as well. We do need to get it wrapped with the Free Talk Live and LRN stuff on the outside. That way it's completely clear to people whose it is, because they probably assume it belongs to the Porcupine Freedom Festival or to Brian, who was the one who brought it here. It's unknown what people actually think, and we haven't really made a show of force with the mobile studio,
And
so to speak.
I want to say Brian himself has done a great job taking care of it. He
has
fixed it up and it looks really nice and professional in here, and I'm pretty sure he didn't break the door.
No, absolutely not. Brian, and even if he had, he would have gotten it fixed. But Brian was not the one who broke the door. I don't know how it happened, and no one seemed to be able to give me an answer when I talked to him about that earlier. They're just like, well, it happened sometime Tuesday. And, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, I was locked in here.
Yeah, yes, that was very unpleasant. And in addition, I'm claustrophobic, right? I don't even take elevators because of that.
Whoa. My mom does that.
But not being able to leave out of one of the only 2 doors here, that can easily cause a panic attack.
I didn't know that there was a door right behind me, so I was like, is this going to get open sometime soon?
Right. So there are 2 doors, thankfully, but like we have a lot of equipment in here. We have to haul it. Does this door even lock at this point? Is it secure enough that we can put equipment in here and travel with it from one place to another? There's a lot of questions here that unfortunately we're going to have to resolve at some point today.
It's what this thing is it gets pulled by like a really big truck, and it has a window on one side. It's actually a TV studio. It's not really supposed to be for radio. The window is for, say, there's some event going on in Chicago. So you put this mobile studio where you can see like the skyline of Chicago or something, and then the reporter can stand there. He's indoors, but you see Chicago in the background, and he's like, yeah, reporting live from blah, 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 blah.
I really think this glass window should be openable, and like some sort of screen should be put there, because that would be really helpful toward getting airflow going on. So
that's a huge window.
Yeah, that's something that can be looked into. Like next year, though, I really think we should have this at the Free Talk Live site, and that we should just do the show in there with some speakers on the outside that are pointed at the canopies that exist now, with some chairs out there. Because, we have this thing. It's all set up now. We might as well use it, as far as I can tell. And it is nice. I'm very happy to be in here. I'm very thankful to the people who have put in a lot of work in it over the last year or 2 when I've been in prison, because it came out really, really, really well. There are some minor things that still have to be addressed, like we can't use the air conditioner because it immediately flips the breaker. We have to use the generator, and I'm not entirely sure how to even do that. But I haven't been in this thing enough to know how all of it works and what all of the things do. I was struggling earlier to open up a window. But it also cuts us off from the festival. And I think that might be a weird experience of trying to do the show in here while like people are outside. It's good for the purposes of actually recording the audio.
Yeah, because then if that person started playing music, we probably could just continue.
Yeah, there's very little background noise here. It's very well insulated. We have a speaker, a particularly loud speaker. This is, I know her name. The Chinese lady who moved here.
Lily Tang Williams?
Yes, that's it. Thank you. Lily Williams is actually doing a speech right now. And if you ever heard her speak, she can get very, very loud.
Yeah, and her speeches are really, really good and impressive. I don't think she's like 100% like ANCAP like us, but she is very anti-communist, and communists aren't human, so.
Like many libertarians, she is very concerned about youth and children being, quote, corrupted by the trans agenda.
Yeah, and I've seen that too.
Yeah, and I've seen that with her several times on Twitter. And
she's also anti-immigrant, and how are you anti-immigrant and an immigrant?
That is wild. I didn't know that about her.
She's anti-quote illegal immigrants.
Oh, yeah, because if I had to do it the right way, everyone... and that's
like if my dad beat me, your dad should have beat you too. It's not fair.
Yep. And it's exactly the same mentality that businesses and corporations take. Well, we had to get all these licenses, so should you.
Yeah.
I happened to miss Ron Paul this morning, who actually was not attending the Porcupine Freedom Festival, to be clear.
Oh.
Yeah, he did a video session.
Okay, I got confused because I walked past a sign just now that said like coffee and Ron Paul, and I was like, wait, he is here?
That would have been fantastic. To my knowledge, he's never been to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, but surely, as long as I've been coming here,
he's been to Liberty Forum, but I don't know about PorcFest.
I would be shocked to find he's never been here, given, we're his home base. A lot of us are libertarians because of Ron Paul, myself among them. But I happened to miss that today because it was at 11 a.m., and I don't sleep very well. And this morning I happened to sleep worse than usual because now I'm taking Chantix in order to quit smoking, and it's starting to have the effect of making me feel nauseated every time I smoke a cigarette, which is one of the first steps it does along this road of helping you quit smoking. But the very first thing it does is it really screws with your sleep. And I already have a lot of sleep issues. So my sleep is worse than ever. As a result, I think I probably got about 3 hours last night.
Dang.
But after being in prison for so long, I sort of adapted to that very low amount of sleep.
I really want to ask Ian about that. I talked to him this morning, but we don't talk much. But he's in the camp now. He said
fantastic.
More things are good than worse. Like, he's really
Okay.
happy. He said the food is way better at the camp.
Yes, it is.
And he already knew this one guy from jail, and he's in the camp.
Okay.
So they've been like hanging out, I guess.
Well, I wish I could talk to him because I would tell him to, tell Dorian hello for me, and Izzy. I think Big J's probably gone by now, but Dale, tell him hello, and all of the other Spanish people that I hung out with for the last few years. If once they realize who Ian is, they'll be like, "Oh, wait, you're Arya's co-defendant. That's awesome. Welcome."
He's probably told him what he's in for, since they want to make sure he's not a chomo.
Yep, and he has the added advantage of actually having gone to trial, which puts him in a very unique subset of people there at the camp who are guaranteed not to be snitches. Well, just about guaranteed not to be snitches. I guess they could be snitches still within BOP custody, but obviously that wouldn't apply to Ian. But that happens a lot. A lot of these people are in there with 501c3s. I've already forgotten the terminology, but it's some part of a plea deal where they become witnesses for the prosecution. They help the FBI investigate other people, and it's basically snitching.
And that's just...
It's a 5K1C is what it is.
And is that just public knowledge and everyone hates them?
Yes, officially everyone hates them, but it's so common at the camp because that's typically how people end up at the camp, is by snitching.
Wow.
There were a few of us who didn't. Obviously, I was not among those people who snitched. Ian would be among those people who did not snitch. And so was Dell and a few other Spanish people. But it's really hard to avoid people who didn't either take a safety valve or end up taking a 5K1C, which is, it's complicated. It's I don't know how all of the legal stuff works. I hope that noise didn't come through as someone just accidentally hit the trailer with the ladder.
I don't think it's an accident. They're climbing up the ladder.
Yeah, let me see what's going on. And we're back from a quick pause. Sorry about that. Someone was attempting... There is a balcony on top of the mobile studio here.
That you can stand on?
Yes.
Oh.
It's even got railing around it. It seems pretty nice. I have not been up there yet, but it seems pretty cool. And while we were in here recording, some people decided to just put a ladder up against the studio and start climbing on top of it. So,
Did you ask them not to?
Yes.
Okay. Because then we'd hear their footsteps.
Right. And that's just another example of how... we just have to be firmer with this thing. The red recording light is on. I checked, and it's very minor, right? It's very hard to see, but before you go doing things like that, and with the door shut especially, someone should check. And anyway, it is what it is. I'm happy the thing exists, and I'm happy that the people who have been taking care of it have been doing so well. Broken door aside, and little hiccups like that aside. It's a fantastic place. Ian, as well, did a fantastic job of setting up the equipment in here. When I first got out of prison and was re-added to the group the mobile studio group, they sent me some pictures of it, and I was not at all impressed with what I saw. I just saw a bunch of empty stuff and boxes of equipment that weren't set up. I don't know exactly why they sent me those pictures.
Ian made this.
He did, indeed.
It's a binder that explains how to use all the equipment in here. And right when you open it, you see a vehicle registration that says it's owned by Shire Free Church.
Fantastic. That might... I hope
Let's take that out and put it in a frame.
Yeah, I hope that never becomes necessary for us to invoke. But you never know. If it's necessary, it's necessary. Regardless, I lost my train of thought there.
Sorry, my alarm went off.
No, it's okay. Well, I did want to talk about nudists at the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year.
Me too.
I just launched a new thing called the Free Talk blog, so I'll give you credentials and stuff like that. Because not everything that I want to write ends up fitting on Free Keene because it's not related to Keene or New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
Like the nudity thing. I just wanted to rant about nudity for a while, so where am I going to put something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Free Talk blog could work just fine for that. And we can just have hosts when they want to write something, hey, throw it up there.
That's a really cool idea. Sometimes I just became a blue check on Twitter, and I'm gonna actually try to get enough engagement to make it monetized. I don't know why. I just was well, I waste a lot of time on here. I bet I could do it. Like, I had a couple things go, like, kind of viral recently. I just have to talk about Trump more.
Jeremy Kaufman has managed to make money on Twitter. I think he posted about it recently, something like $60 or $80 per month, which is not a huge amount of money.
No, he said like $700.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he said like $700. And Ron Rule also does the same thing. He's a Free Stater.
But even if it was only $6 or $7 a month, you're getting paid to use Twitter.
As opposed to not.
Yeah, versus everyone else who's more or less paying to use Twitter. So that's great idea. I hope it works out for you. I'm sure it will. People love your tweets. And like, you're very popular, and I know that because like generally as soon as you tweet something, it will show up there on my homepage.
Cool.
I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter because other than you and like 2 or 3 other people, everything people posts is just arguing with other libertarians. And it's exhausting. It's so toxic. But it's still a good place to find out about things and to engage with listeners and all of that great stuff. So it does have its advantages.
I have posted a few negative things about the way the Free State Project has handled things. And it's just because like somebody's got to criticize them. Like most people are just going to be like, you're great. You're doing great.
Sorry about that little hiccup there. I had to pause it again because someone like opened the door in order to get their purse, which again, like, why is your purse being stored in our studio? Like, who was that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never seen her before.
So like, definitely time to start keeping a closer eye on this thing, which sucks because that's not really the kind of thing I'm into, and I don't think it's the kind of thing you're into. But nudity at PorcFest is the topic I really want to talk about because Jeff did not make it this year, and I realized today that he does not want his last name said on the air.
I think he moved.
I think he moved to San Diego or somewhere in California. I mean, we lost a really good activist as a result of this.
A really smart person, a scientist.
One of the few openly, I think he was gay.
Yeah, I think so.
Libertarians among the Free Staters, and a great activist. Now, a lot of his activism was toward nudity, which isn't everyone's cup of tea, but that's still liberty activism as far as I can tell.
He still threw parties and did some stuff with NHLA, and he like was always a voice of reason when things are getting too righty. Like, yes, things can get too righty. Like when people are saying like, we need to put a bill in to make it to where circumcision is illegal. I've seen Jeff be like, hold on, that doesn't make sense. Parental rights.
Yeah.
Because people are just becoming very righty.
Yeah. Circumcision's a weird one, and like I can see both sides of the argument, but ultimately, yeah, I think it would have to come down to parental rights, and I would try to use persuasion to discourage parents from doing that rather than trying to beat them over the head with the government. But a lot of libertarians do have that perspective where if they like a thing, then it's okay to bludgeon people with the government in order to achieve that thing.
Mm-hmm. Or if it has to do with the children, then people will just lose their minds and stop being libertarians.
They really do, and that's how this nudist thing seems to have come about, because there were no issues with the nudist people whatsoever at the Porcupine Freedom Festival last year. They did their thing, it went well, no one got into a fight, no one freaked out, everything was fine until after the event when a lot of people online began complaining about the nudists there.
And making up stories, like they're saying stuff like, well, there's a nudist standing outside my kid's tent and like no one has found out what you're talking about. And like some of the problems were just Elstone, and people were like, the nudist. And it's like, he was not even with them. He's just like a rogue person that needs to be reeled in from someone anyway. It has nothing to do with the nudist, even if he gets nude and does things that are against the rules.
Yeah, certainly. He's a bit of a maverick and a wild card, so you can't really hold other people responsible for him.
And he's not like part of their group anyway. So last year they had the nudists in they didn't have them anywhere. The nudists had their own RV site. So among all the other RVs, far away, like the actual farthest quadrant of the campground from where the kids stay, that's where the nudists were, and there was no problems except like Vivek Ramaswamy and his team complained. They're like, hey, there are people that are naked like a couple rows down from us. Can you put a stop to that? And to their credit, last year they said, no, we can't put a stop to that. And this year they decided to move them up by the seasonals, which are people who are not libertarians that live in seasonal trailers up on the campground.
There is more about this coming up, and we are live. Well, sorry, we're not live. We're recording from Porcupine Freedom Festival last day, so come hang out with us. It is Free Talk Live.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Sally Patterson with a look back at some of the week's top stories. People in North America, India, Europe and other parts of the world sweltered under brutal heat waves this week, with meteorologists saying climate change is at least in part to blame. In New York City, the heat prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather became a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann reports.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe.
Meanwhile, India's health ministry said there have been at least 110 confirmed heatstroke deaths in the country since March. Weather experts say this year's summer season has been exceptionally harsh. Shiroshi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Government records show that India recorded over 40,000 suspected cases of heat stroke this summer. In the past week, Delhi's hospitals noted an uptick in the number of heat-related deaths. Health officials also observed that most patients brought in were people from poorer socioeconomic backgrounds who lived and worked in the open. Experts say that it is the poor that bear the cost of severe climate change since they have no protection against the unrelenting heat or biting cold. They say a prolonged summer like this one should be classified as a natural disaster.
On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dissolved his war cabinet, set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas on southern Israel, amid growing political turmoil as the fighting in Gaza continues. Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7th to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity.
US President Joe Biden this week outlined what he called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan allows around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the country. Biden spoke at the White House.
These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country.
And pop artist Justin Timberlake was arrested on Tuesday for allegedly driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. Timberlake has pleaded not guilty and is scheduled to be back in court next month. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. We're here on site at the beautiful Rogers Campground in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, hanging out at Pork Fest number 21. I feel a little bad suddenly, so I want to give shout out to Constance, who is the director of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. She was actually on with us a few segments ago, which I think was yesterday or maybe the day before. You lose track at Pork Fest.
Yeah.
And we discussed this nudity thing, but like I didn't like some of the things she said, but we were approaching the end of the segment, so we didn't really get a chance to hash it out. And I don't like getting into like arguments with people on the show, I feel like it probably wouldn't have been good radio, and it could have created animosity between Constance and myself, and I don't want to risk that.
People loved me getting mad at Dennis Pratt, but I also, if I could go back in time, just wouldn't do it because like he was annoying me because he like wasn't letting me talk and talking to me like a dumb idiot. So like, but I'm over it now, and we have buried the hatchet. But I'm just saying, like, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't have fought with him on the show. But I just got really triggered.
Right, I understand entirely. It seems like Free Talk Live and PorcFest are always at odds over something. And I'm trying not to create that here over this nudity thing, as much as I think people should be able to do their own thing. And as I said in the blog that you can find at freetalkblog.com, if people want to come on our site and take all their clothes off, I will stand by their bodily freedom. I don't know what effect that might have. It might achieve absolutely nothing except all of us getting banned. But I'm going to stand on that principle because I think that is the principled position. I'm not a nudist, but it's a very small step from you have to wear clothes to you have to wear a mask.
Yeah. Somebody said to me when they're like a not even necessarily anti-nudist person, but they were saying, well, just to play the devil's advocate, nudity wasn't a thing at the first few PorcFests. And I was like, okay, so like if you didn't claim a certain freedom at the first PorcFest, like, sorry, you can't do that here. You didn't do it at the first PorcFest. It's kind of silly.
There were also no trans people at the first few PorcFests. So like, are trans people
can't
not
do that
welcome
here
now? Yeah. Because it's sort of the same thing, and this is why the issue is so important to me, because however one slices it, I am a biological male who identifies as female and who wears women's clothes. And when I first came to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, there were people who took issue with this, who wanted to know, why are we letting this man run around in women's clothes? My kids don't need to be seeing this.
Wow, I didn't even really hear about that. I thought it was basically fine.
That was back in 2017. It was a long time ago. And to the Paxton's credit, they stood by me 100%. In fact...
Oh, they were the organizers at that year?
They were. In fact, Roger Paxton put me on the stage and I gave a speech that year. My first year at PorcFest, knowing almost no one, I ended up giving a speech about the importance of forgiveness. I wish I still had that, but it was so long ago and like it was all improvisation. I had nothing planned. One of their speakers canceled. And he came over and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, well, actually, I asked him. Sorry, he did not ask me. I was like, hey, your speaker canceled. It seems like you need a person. I'm a person. And it went over surprisingly well. And this year, there are a number of other trans people here. But it could all be undone instantly.
I didn't even know that.
If these conservatives who take issue with nudity also take issue, like they
other things people wear.
Yeah, they would take issue with the Drag Queen Story Hour going on here.
It's kind of funny. LPNH was kind of not really on my side with the whole Maj Toure Drag Queen Story Hour thing that I won't rehash, but if you know, you know. Yeah. But LPNH did this thing called Dairy Queen Story Hour. It was ice cream, and one of them wore a long red wig, which I wondered is related to you. But I
saw someone the other day in a long red wig.
His name is Toad.
Okay. I assumed it had to have been like some sort of messed up homage to me.
It was because they did Dairy Queen Story Hour and read stories to children's, and they all had wigs, including Jeremy Kaufman.
Okay.
But they had different wigs, and his was long and bright red, and I wondered if that had to do with you.
At this point, I would kind of have to assume so. Not to be arrogant about it, but they're like, is only one bright red hair person
I thought the same thing
around here. So.
I thought that had to be about you. So.
Oh well, that does me credit, I guess. Or thanks for the shout out. As
he's kind of funny and not really a hater, so I don't think he'd be like
right.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would be done in mean spirits. I mean, too many people. I get along well with everyone here, minus the very few conservatives. There was a few years ago that someone came up and they wanted to do the show, so they were just hanging out, and they were talking to, I think, Matt next door, and I asked him if he wanted to be on the show now. He said, no, I just want to be on with Mark. I was like, well, Mark's not here right now, but I'm here, and we can get you on. He goes, no, I don't want to be on with you. I just want to be on with Mark.
That's weird.
So I said, well, then you don't get to be on. Get out of here. You're not going to be on our show if you don't want to be on with me, right?
That's really weird.
Yeah. And I can only assume it was because I'm trans.
Also, just like, I want to choose which host to be on. Like, that's so weird.
Yeah, it's certainly not the way it works. But Mark was the one who arranged the interview, and I explained it all to Mark, and he was obviously like, yeah, I support you 100%. I was like, well, really, it didn't matter if you did, because I was the only person there with the technical capability of doing the show. So, like, you want me to record this show while you have something against me and let you have the platform of being on the show? No, thank you. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's really weird.
But overall, it's a very pleasant experience for me here. Everyone knows me. Everyone's super friendly to me. I don't encounter any issues. And if I were to encounter some sort of issue, there's an entire army of libertarians behind me who like me and support me. So that is pleasant, but it is a very small step from people saying you have to wear clothes to you have to wear the clothes of your birth sex. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to, get too far into that. But
I don't think people really even might even think that, or might not take that for granted, that is true. But I completely believe that's true. It's just like the mask thing you said. It's like, it's about whether or not you should wear some specific clothes. And a lot of people's argument for wearing clothes, their anti-nudist argument is, well, it's just more hygienic. Well, that's kind of what this freaking mask people were saying.
Yep, that is exactly what they were saying. And I don't know that I agree that it's more hygienic.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't. If you think someone's unhygienic, then don't give them a hug.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But there was this sort of argument that apparently came up that I got to miss, thankfully, where people argued that seeing nudity was a NAP violation, a violation of the non-aggression principle, that like seeing something you didn't like was a NAP violation. And again, I have to go right back to the trans thing, where seeing a trans woman, seeing what these conservatives would call a man in a dress, could equally constitute a NAP violation.
I could seriously say this. I could make the same argument and it be just as convincing that I don't like seeing fat people.
Yeah. I would rather see the average nudist here naked than some of the people who have been going around topless. And
or even just some of the people who are fat walking around in like really tight leggings and stuff.
Yeah, that's thoroughly unpleasant. I don't want to knock anyone here, obviously, but it was hot a few days ago. It was like 95-ish degrees, and it was humid, it was muggy, it was gross. Yeah. So I don't blame people for walking around without shirts on, but like some of you people, I don't ever want to see you topless again, right? Like, I will fight for your right to do so and to be topless and to be completely naked if you want, but please don't. That's all I'm saying. So Jeff ended up not coming this year, and I finally made it over to the nudist, what are they calling it? The Body Freedom Zone this year.
Yeah.
I tried to find it a few nights ago, but as it turned out, I didn't go far enough back.
Yeah, because it's like way shoved off in the corner. And during all the planning, like right after last year's Pork Fest, they start planning for this one. And they kept putting out like a picture of where they wanted the zone to be. They kept pushing it further back and making it smaller, like over the weeks.
Yeah, I believe it. Now, Rogers Campground is designed as a giant circle with a lot of roads that connect two of them. I guess it's more like a rectangle that connect two of the sides. But the part of the campground where the nudists are at is right past the road that last goes all the way down and connects. So this place, it's not even a complete site. You can tell there used to be stuff there, but like this is where the development of Rogers Campground ended. And they literally put them on the very edge of the campground, surrounded by seasonals, surrounded by non-libertarians and Trump supporters.
Who they rent like something like a trailer out here. It's not really a trailer, I just don't know what else to call it. And those things are permanently here, and they get to live in it all the seasons except winter.
Right. And that's why they're called seasonals, because of zoning laws or something, you're not allowed to live in them during the winter. I don't know the specifics about it, but they're not libertarians. They tend to be Trump supporters.
Yeah, there are Trump signs up there.
And the result of this, the very predictable result of this that you said Ian predicted, was that one of these wacky Trump supporters was going to attack one of the nudists.
Yes, in fact, I said, yeah, my husband Ian said this was going to happen when it, spoiler alert, did happen this year. So I said, my husband already said this was going to happen. He totally predicted this. And other people kept saying, I said the same thing. Oh, my boyfriend said the same thing. Like, it's a really obvious thing if you think about it. If you know enough about Rogers Campground, if you've been here enough times, it's kind of an obvious thing.
These nudists, whether you agree with their nudism or not, there are people. They're libertarians who happen to be nudists as well, and we should have their backs. And we should make sure that they're safe and well taken care of. To me, this is honestly, and I hate to keep going back to this analogy, but it's no different than saying, you trans people, you're allowed back there in the back.
Yeah.
And if you want to come out into the rest of the campground, you have to wear the clothing of your birth sex. Now, obviously, doing that to trans people would result in the Trump supporters over there getting upset and probably attacking one of these trans people.
Yeah, if you don't care about trans people, you can make this argument about many things. If you want to say, like, if the organizers this year were Muslims and they said, all you women wearing non-burqas have to be in this corner over here.
Yep,
like,
also true.
It's no different. It's really no different.
It's not, and it sets a dangerous precedent, and this is the reason that I'm against it. I understand that the Porcupine Freedom Festival has, to some extent, to cater to the majority and where the money is. But money isn't everything, and if we have to sell out our principles and not stand by our own people against conservatives who come after them because we want the conservatives to give us money to come here, then we're not really libertarians at that point anymore, are we? I had this discussion with Peakless earlier, and he wanted it on the air, but I was actually tied up trying to fix a weird DNS and SSL certificate issue with the new Free Talk blog website.
Oh, we should totally have him on.
Yeah, it would be great. We'd have to set up the third microphone, but we can absolutely do that. He's running around somewhere for sure. But what I ended up saying to him was, and I've lost my train of thought again. It's one of those days.
The last thing you said was that we're not libertarians anymore at that point, and
that's right. He was talking about how it's basically just the market doing what the market does. You know, more people are conservatives and against nudists, and they want to come here. So the market has spoken, and the nudists get to be back there outside of PorcFest, because that is outside of PorcFest. Like, PorcFest ends where the seasonals begin.
I don't think that has anything to do with the market, because the market has to do with, like, oh, well, we already bought all these sites, we bought them first or something like that. But, like, forcing a business out into a corner has nothing to do with the market. Like, using the state, the equivalent of the state, which is the aristocracy, which is the PorcFest organizers.
Yeah.
That's just not the market. I think that's a stretch.
Even if it was the market, it really highlights the flaw that libertarians sometimes have to consider the market to be queen of everything, when it's not. Principles have to be queen of everything. The market isn't always right. And we have to accept that. The market could easily decide, you know what, we don't need any more straight cis white men. If you're not at least bisexual, you're being exiled. The market could easily decide these sorts of things, especially in this sort of leftist world that we're seeing develop. Like, we have no control over what the majority of people say.
Yeah, it's not just like democracy.
No, and democracy is fundamentally flawed for the exact reasons that we already know. People are kind of dumb. And because of that, the market is also fundamentally flawed. It's the best we have to work with, and I'm not saying we shouldn't work with it. But as libertarians, it's important for us to lead by example and to let principles guide our hand in the market, not let the market guide our principles. And that's sort of what you're doing when you say, well, the market has spoken, so the nudists are out.
I don't even know if that's true. That's what's so crazy. It's like there has been no, like, tally of how many people like the nudists and how many people want them out in a corner. Like, I've never seen that. Like, I've seen just as many people saying that they support them or don't care as the, like, it seems like a small, loud group saying, like, my children might have seen boobs, you know, like.
Which is another point that, you know, I made in the blog. Children don't care about that sort of thing. When I first came out to my sister, her response was, well, my nephew isn't going to understand this, and I don't want him around it. He's not going to like it, so you can't be associated with our family anymore. She did ultimately change that position for reasons I'm not going to get into here, but my nephew was 6 or 7 years old at the time. He would not have cared one bit for his uncle to suddenly want to wear women's clothes and makeup and stuff. His response would have been, okay, but can we still play Minecraft together?
Yeah.
That's all he would have cared about because he was a child. There are naked children running around here, toddlers, usually 2 or 3 years old, and no one thinks anything about it.
There are kids here that are allowed to cuss, and that makes me uncomfortable, but I don't go find their parents and make them stop.
Yep.
That really makes me uncomfortable. Like, I don't know why. I'm just like, that feels more like negligence than letting them see boobs.
Letting them see boobs is definitely not going to hurt them. Letting them see full nudity, absolutely not going to hurt them. What happens is that the parents make a big deal out about it and say, no, don't look at that. That's shameful. That's sinful. That's bad. Don't look at that. And the child learns that nudity is somehow bad. And that gets instilled in them to the extent that they don't want to go around naked outside because they feel bad about it. They learned at a very early age that it's wrong to be naked, even though that's the natural state of affairs. And there's nothing morally right or wrong about how one chooses to dress. It simply is what it is. It's the same thing that happens when a child falls and hurts themselves. If you just sort of ignore the child or say, hey, good job, get back up, then everything is fine. But if you run over there and go, oh my God, are you okay? That looks up, the child is going to immediately start crying.
Yep, they completely learn their reactions about things, even pain, from their parents.
Yep, so your kids do not care about nudity. And rewind that and listen to it again, because your kids do not care about nudity. You do. And you're making it into a big deal for your kids. And now, as a result of this, someone has been attacked with a knife. We've lost a really good liberty activist. And all of the issues that I've seen with nudists online after Porcupine Freedom Festivals in previous years, they've all been non-existent. I think it's a matter of the fact that if you look at the Globe magazine article that came out about PorcFest last year, written by Annalisa Quinn, you can find it online. It's a fantastic article. I also linked directly to it at freetalkblog.com. Actually, I didn't. I linked to the archive.ph version of it.
Oh, okay.
Because the Globe magazine is paywalled. And it's a really good article, so you can find that over there. Again, that's freetalkblog.com. Somewhere in there's a link to it. And in there, it talks a lot about nudity. In fact, the article mentions the nude Olympics.
Yeah, I went to the Nude Olympics last year, and I survived seeing them. And also, that's where the only place I saw the reporters, and they were like laughing and having a good time. They're like, wow, that's crazy.
Every time that I saw Annalisa Quinn, she was hanging out at that particular site. Not naked herself, but like that's where the younger, hipper vibe tends to be. And I've been wondering this year why that particular crowd, I would call that my particular crowd, because they tend to be pro-LGBT. They tend to be all about tarot cards and dancing for the summer solstice and these similar things.
I really, really, really liked that Body Freedom Village they had last year. I haven't even visited it this year because everything's far away and everything takes so much time, and I've been sleeping till like 2 p.m. Anyways, but last year they did a gun fashion show, which is awesome, like a nude gun fashion show, and Jeff let me choose the music for it, and that was really awesome. I chose Gesaffelstein, however you say that.
That's really cool. I didn't attend any of those events. Last year I was in a really dark place mentally, and this was why I tried to add Jeff and communicate with him while I was still in prison. I added his email, and then 6 months went by and he hadn't responded to me, so I just deleted him. And I think that was when he told you to tell me he was sorry, he's busy, blah, blah, blah. That happened a lot with people I attempted to email. But regardless, I wanted to apologize to him for just... I did go by their site a lot last year, and I wasn't mean or hostile or anything, but there was something wrong with me last year. I was depressed and anxious and not in a good mental place. And it's not that I took it out on anyone, but I wasn't a joy to be around. And, I recognized that, and I owed them an apology for it. I did apologize to one of the other people last night, but it's difficult to find them now because they are literally as far away from PorcFest as possible.
Everyone I've talked to so far has said, why couldn't they stay where they were last year? Because like maybe in years ago, they were like even closer to everyone else. But last year, 2023, they were at a far RV site and it didn't bother anyone. It was fine. They had like a tent. You would have to be really watching over there to really see anything you didn't want to see. It was fine.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what PM stands for on the PorcFest map, and I don't think there's
perimeter?
No, I mean, it like MH stands for mobile home. RV stands for, I don't know actually what RV stands for, something vehicle. And PM stands for something else. It means one of these seasonal properties, but I don't know what it actually stands for. But you can look at the map at porcfest.com, and you can literally see how PorcFest ends, where the
seasonals are?
Yeah, where the seasonals begin. And the Body Freedom Village, there are 3 rows of seasonals of Trump supporters and residents and non-libertarians separating the Body Freedom Zone from the rest of PorcFest. So how dare PorcFest claim the body freedom friendly people as part of PorcFest at this time? They've clearly exiled them to the perimeter as surely as the USSR might have done sending someone to Siberia. It sends as clear of a "you're not welcome here" as they can without actually banning them. And as we learned last year, the ban doesn't actually seem to work anyway, because Mikey, of course, was banned last year, and he was very flagrant about not obeying that ban.
Yeah, he was walking around openly, and he was like, yeah, I'm not listening to this, because he should, because when a rule is unjust, it is a duty to disobey it.
I agree, and he was banned for reasons that had really nothing to do with him. Someone hacked a thing, and he got blamed for it, even though he wasn't responsible for it.
Hacked is a strong word, too. They joined a Jitsi group.
Also, yeah.
It's like saying the trolls hacked me whenever they did that, and anyways.
Yeah, so he hung out outside of Rogers Campground here for most of the week. He did ultimately get permission to come in. I believe that happened yesterday. And I'm very glad to see him. Of course, he's not vending, but he may be done vending here entirely because of thefts that had occurred over the last few years that he talked about.
Yeah.
I don't know about any particular thefts. I haven't heard about that from anyone except Mikey.
He sold, oh, you mean this year?
Or just in general.
Well, there was vandalism, which is kind of like theft to Liberty last year, and they're not here this year. Like, people just came and poured out all their coffee and tea that was like
Oh,
left.
that's right. That did happen.
It was like self-serve. So it was like ruined product.
And this is not why the Liberty people did not return this year. There was something about a relationship ending and people going their separate ways, as happens.
I went to go see where Mikey was across the street before he got unbanned. Suspiciously, right after my tweet about him being banned, I'm just going to say, I'm going to take credit. 100% credit.
Absolutely. Well, you also had the brilliant idea of like kidnapping him.
Oh, that wasn't my idea. That was Colin's.
Okay. Well,
it didn't work out because he got unbanned, but you can go ahead and explain it.
Well, the idea was, I don't, you should explain it because it was your idea, so you're more familiar with it.
Well, it was Colin's idea, but basically, he was like, let's just go get like a whole bunch of people, like 20 at least, and we'll go over there and we'll film it so there's no questions about what happened, and we're going to be like, you're coming with us. And he's going to be like, no, man, I can't go in because I am banned. And then we'll pick him up and bring him forcibly in and make a big spectacle about it so everyone sees that we're bringing him in, and then we'll put him down and say, if you try to leave again, we're just going to keep grabbing you. So he's going to be like, man, I can't leave.
It would have worked, I think. It would have made some people unhappy because it doesn't respect their authority.
Yeah.
Right? And that's ultimately what it came down to, and that's at least according to Mikey. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I've never known Mikey to be a liar, and he said what he was told was that the reason he was banned this year was that he did not respect last year's ban.
That's what I heard too, and it makes sense to me. It's probably what happened.
It makes sense to me as something that would happen.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make logical sense to me. Okay, so because your ban last year didn't work, you're going to ban him again? So if he violates that ban this year, you'll just ban him again next year, and he'll just ignore that again.
Yeah, he was selling things when he was on the other side of the street, but it was just like seed oil central, so I didn't support it.
But he did point out that, the PorcFest organizers were not very happy about his appearance last year because it made them look impotent. Like, they can't enforce this ban against him without calling the police. And that would be such a bad look. Thankfully, that didn't happen. There is more coming up here from the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It is Free Talk Live.
The cops did come this year, and we could talk about it.
They did.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country.
Yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing. To be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the latest episode of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Sally Patterson with a look back at some of the week's top stories. People in North America, India, Europe and other parts of the world sweltered under brutal heat waves this week, with meteorologists saying climate change is at least in part to blame. In New York City, the heat prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather became a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann reports.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe.
Meanwhile, India's health ministry said there have been at least 110 confirmed heatstroke deaths in the country since March. Weather experts say this year's summer season has been exceptionally harsh. Shiroshi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Government records show that India recorded over 40,000 suspected cases of heat stroke this summer. In the past week, Delhi's hospitals noted an uptick in the number of heat-related deaths. Health officials also observed that most patients brought in were people from poorer socioeconomic backgrounds who lived and worked in the open. Experts say that it is the poor that bear the cost of severe climate change since they have no protection against the unrelenting heat or biting cold. They say a prolonged summer like this one should be classified as a natural disaster.
On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dissolved his war cabinet, set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas on southern Israel, amid growing political turmoil as the fighting in Gaza continues. Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7 to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity.
US President Joe Biden this week outlined what he called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan allows around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the country. Biden spoke at the White House.
These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country.
And pop artist Justin Timberlake was arrested on Tuesday for allegedly driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. Timberlake pleaded not guilty and is scheduled to be back in court next month. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, what explains the collapse in support that opinion polls in the UK are indicating for the country's governing Conservative Party? In the latest BMG research poll for the iPaper, support for Rishi Sunak's party has tumbled to just 19%, compared to 42% for the opposition Labour Party. There are still 2 weeks to go in the UK's general election, so obituaries for the party of Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher are premature. But Andrew Neil, chairman of The Spectator, is offering one nonetheless.
One of the remarkable things of Brexit, whether you are for or against it, it's broken the Tory party. The Brexiteers won, majority were Conservative, but getting it, doing it, living with it afterwards has broken them. It's exhausted them. It's taken away all their bandwidth. They had no time. And then, of course, the pandemic came along and that made it doubly difficult. But it's a bit like the Corn Laws in the 1840s. The repeal of the Corn Laws destroyed that Conservative Party as we knew it, and a new one had to rise from the ashes. Brexit has destroyed the Conservative Party as we've known it.
He spoke to Spectator TV. Nipping at the Conservatives' heels in the polls is Reform UK, the party now led by one of the principal architects of Brexit, Nigel Farage.
A reminder of some of the week's top stories. People in North America, India, Europe and other parts of the world sweltered under brutal heat waves this week, with meteorologists saying climate change is at least in part to blame. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dissolved his wartime cabinet amid growing political turmoil. And pop artist Justin Timberlake was arrested on Tuesday for allegedly driving while intoxicated. That's your roundup of news making headlines this week. Sally Patterson reporting.
A report confirms that many Iraqis are still holding a petty grudge about the U.S. invasion. An advanced alien civilization discovers an uninhabitable planet, and a single woman has a Facebook profile picture with her sister. This is the Onion Week in Review. A groundbreaking study published Monday in the Journal of the American Medical Association confirmed that it is impossible to lose weight. No one has ever done it, and those who are trying should give up immediately. Researchers said that findings conclusively prove that shedding excess weight has never happened, changing your physical appearance is impossible, and that all sorts of exercises, personal training regimens, and diets will never, ever work.
Well, our test results conclusively prove that if you're going to the gym to lose weight, you will fail. You could work out every day and eat nothing and you still wouldn't lose an ounce. Skinny people will stay skinny, overweight people will be overweight. That's just how it is.
In other news, an area man is outraged his private information is being collected by someone other than advertisers. And a crowd cheers as this 93-year-old fuck-up finally graduates from college.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You're invited to come to the Porcupine Freedom Festival with us. I almost said you're invited to give us a call. But of course, it's already Saturday night by the time you're hearing this. So chances are good you're not going to make it to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And a lot of people, I think, plan to pack up their stuff today because it's, of course, going to be raining all day tomorrow as well. And otherwise, you have to put away wet equipment. And then when you get home, take it out and let it dry off. So on that note, yeah, that's generally my plan, is to take this stuff down tomorrow morning in the rain. And then once it gets back down to Keens, just take it out and let it dry off and then put it back up.
Hopefully it's not as rainy down there.
I'm hoping not. And I mean, it may take a few days before it's, bright and sunny, but an hour of sunshine, it'll be all taken care of. And, obviously we have to buy... I mean, realistically, that canopy kind of died today, too, because of the rain. It's still holding up and it's still fine. And I'm told that you can buy just the top part that goes over it, the cover, whatever that's called. So that may be a better solution, given that the frame itself is still fine. It was the frame that broke on the other one.
That's way worse.
Yeah, so we got to buy one anyway. So at least that makes packing up a little bit easier. There's one less canopy. The bag ripped this year as well, while people were bringing it up here for us, and then the canopy itself broke, and I was able to sort of get it back together. It broke during the wind that we had the first day of ForkFest, there was gusts of like 25 to 30 miles per hour. We tried recording the show, but stuff was blowing everywhere, and the mics were picking up the wind. It was not pleasant. The wind felt good, but it was not pleasant from a recording standpoint. And then, of course, that did break the canopy. And it seemed to be fine. It held together until the thunderstorm that we got, I believe, Wednesday, where it finally died. It caved in on itself, like, completely.
It's kind of good timing, though, because it was like the very tail end of our last segment we had to record.
Yeah. And that canopy, it was a basic one that was bought from Walmart, probably like $25 or so, and we've been using it for many years, so we definitely got our money's worth out of it.
Nice.
But it did collapse, and I felt bad because I didn't clean it up that day. Because, I mean, honestly, I wasn't sure where to begin. You had this collapsed canopy that created a giant bowl of water. And, you know, it's rainy. I don't like being wet. I don't like dumping water on myself. And there was no way to get that cleaned up without getting water all over myself. So I put it off until the next morning. It was the first thing I did, though. Got all that taken care of. And it was sad to see it go, you know. But good things are coming for the Free Talk Live event here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, because now we've got this mobile studio that is up and running, and it's going to look great at our campsite next year, at our RV site rather. So I'm already looking forward to that.
I hope it can be wrapped by then. That'd be really cool.
I hope so too. I don't know anything about having a vehicle wrapped though. Marcus,
I actually did one once.
Okay, perfect. Then
I'm not doing it ever again for the rest of my life.
Oh, you mean you physically did it?
Yeah, me and my ex-husband did one together because he is Mexican and he can do everything himself. And he learned it on the internet, and we did it together, and it was crazy hard, and that was like the only time we ever fought.
I can imagine, because doing window tints yourself is extraordinarily difficult. Like, you cannot have any air bubbles in there whatsoever. And I can imagine that the same sort of thing is true.
Yeah, the air bubbles was the whole thing.
About a wrap. Well, luckily there are people that you can pay to do that sort of thing, but I don't know. I mean, this is a large vehicle. Wrapping it might cost a pretty penny, but we can always hang the Free Talk Live banners from it as well, and the LRN banners and all of that other great stuff that we've been putting around the canopies. I'm going to buy I don't need to get into all of it while we're here doing the radio show, but people might be interested in what our plans are for next year, because Free Talk Live, and I've talked to Ian about this, I've talked to Mark about this, I'm pretty sure I've talked to you about this, we're the biggest show here. By leaps and bounds, we have the largest audience. There are a lot of podcasts that used to be here.
I don't know, because there's also Luke Rudkowski.
That's true, but most people don't know who he is when they see him. And that's not the response that you and I get. When they see us, they go, "Hey, you're Aria of Free Talk Live, and you're Bonnie of Free Talk Live." I don't know if they mention Luke Rudkowski at all. It's from change.org.
We Are Change.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Rather than his podcast, which I'm sure is great. I've never listened to it, but I don't listen to a lot of podcasts anyway.
I would just say if you count his Tim Pool thing,
yeah.
They are a huge show. But I don't know if that's his show. I don't know.
No, Tim Pool is definitely a bigger show. There's a lot of podcasts out there that are beating us, but they don't come to PorcFest.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, there were a lot of podcasts here. Like, there were 5 on the row right behind us and 2 on the row right across from us. There was an entire panel of people doing a podcast like directly across from us. Some Bitcoin talk people, not the blog or forum Bitcoin talk. This is just, I think, what they call themselves. And they were Lightning Network enthusiasts who had never actually used Bitcoin before. So I think it was
What?
Yeah, I think it was Zephin or Mikey who called them out on that and got up there and said, "Hey, look, I will give $5 to anyone right now who installs the Edge wallet and wants Bitcoin Cash, which is actually usable."
Nice.
Yeah, it was a fantastic thing to watch that happen. But none of those podcasts came back. There was one called World Eat World or something, because I was going to be on their show. I was going to be on a few of these, but it never actually worked out. And I don't know if the podcast just no longer exists, but it's difficult to do a podcast from PorcFest.
Yeah.
And people expect you to have like this studio audience out there captive and enjoying the show and all of that, but that doesn't really work out when you're doing a podcast. People pop in for a few minutes and then they leave. No one wants to sit there and listen to a 3-hour show be recorded all the time.
Well, people do it at the studio at my house pretty often, but it's just that there's so much going on at PorcFest. Like, you could kind of listen to Free Talk Live anytime, so I don't really blame people for not sitting next to us for an entire show and listening to us record, and they can go off and do other things.
Yeah, I don't blame them either. And I did notice last year that there's 2 different crowds that come to the Free Talk Live site. There's a younger witchy crowd, and then there's like the bearded dude bro crowd that constitutes most libertarians here. And these 2 groups did not coexist. And it was curious to watch this play out, because if the witchy type of people were there and hanging out, then the bearded dudes weren't. And if the bearded dudes were there, then the witchy people weren't. And I found that dynamic fascinating. And
it's kind of fascinating that Taryn is a witchy, bearded libertarian dude bro.
I would definitely... He's not a dude bro.
He has a beard.
He has a beard, but he's definitely not a dude bro.
Okay, I guess I don't know what that means.
I don't know if I could really... I may not know what it means either. But he's not what I would consider to be a dude bro. Whatever I would consider to be a dude bro, because I definitely couldn't define it. But all of
you know when you see it.
Yeah, exactly. All of these dude bros, though, they had their own podcast. And that's one of the issues that libertarians run into a lot, is that you want libertarians to listen to your show, certainly, but chances are good that libertarian is doing their own podcast. And they're going to want you to listen to theirs. And I just don't have a habit of listening to libertarian podcasts.
Yeah, that's the thing. I listen to Free Talk Live every single day. I was like really sad if I missed it for some reason. And that was when I lived in Texas. But then when I got here, I don't really have the same like want to listen to it anymore, even on like the days that I'm not on, because of the fact that I'm just already living like with libertarians in a community. Yeah. And that's my everyday life. And there's nothing wrong with that or something, but I just think it's really most important for outreach.
Well, you're also a critical part of Free Talk Live. So, like, you're on the show all the time, and it would just be listening to yourself a lot. So I get it. I don't listen to a lot of Free Talk Live either. Just pop in occasionally and make sure, obviously things are going good. I'm like, great, things are going good. And then I just sort of close out. I do listen to some podcasts, like Data Over Dogma. That's run by this really cool Mormon religious scholar. I forget his name now, Dan something, but he's really entertaining. He does really good content. And a few other podcasts, none of which have anything to do with libertarianism. And it's because it's a topic that it's been talked about so extensively here at PorcFest and just in general that I don't want to hear about it anymore.
Yeah, Colin was talking about like whenever you go to PorcFest, basically you run into a lot of people that start telling you like, man, things should be decided by the market. And have you ever heard of capitalism? And it's like, yeah, they got to get that out of their system, but once they're here for a few years, it's nice to watch them evolve into like having other conversations.
In my experience, I've got to find those people then, because I'm not finding those other experiences. Like Chris Wade and Captain, they've been coming here for years, and so have these people who have been hanging out with them a few days ago. And as I was setting up to do the show, I heard them just having the same old conversation about how much
economics
they hate, about economics or how much they hate the government or something. And it's like, I understand if you're not from New Hampshire that this is your one time to get all of these ideas out there among people who won't automatically disagree with you. But as a resident of New Hampshire, at Keene at that, which is like the heart of in-your-face activism in New Hampshire, and after having been to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, this is year number 8 for me. Like, I cannot sit through another one of those conversations. I just can't. And that's one of the reasons I don't go out to the bonfires that they're always having around here. They're like, hey, we had such a great fire last night. And I'm like, yeah, sitting around drinking beer, talking about how much you hate the government. I'm sure you did.
I was at the bonfire last night talking with some really awesome new-ish movers, like they're like yearlings, about their experience stopping being Christian and how that all went for them. And because they grew up really strict Christian, we all did quizzing.
Were these younger people?
They're like a little older than me.
Okay.
Like in their 30s.
Because I met some people earlier today who were fans of the show who mentioned a similar sort of background story, but I think he said he was 23 and his girlfriend was 20.
Yeah, not them.
Yeah, and actually, now that I think about it, he said he only moved here in April, so that was too new. But there are a lot of people moving here, and I love to have these conversations that are sort of tangential to libertarianism. I love to talk about religions and philosophy that isn't just free market economics and anti-state sentiments. And those conversations are great when they happen, but why can't we sit down at a libertarian festival and have a conversation about the video games that we like, or the type of music that we like, or any number of other things? I will say, I'm not happy about the type of music libertarians seem to like.
I don't like emo music, so that's what I've been hearing next to our site.
I don't like emo music, and I don't like country.
I didn't know there was country going on. I hadn't really heard that.
There's been a lot of country going on. Like when I left earlier, when you went to go get the picture and I went to go get my laptop charger, there was country playing at one site more or less across from us, and there was still the acoustic guy. It may not have been country, but it seemed like country to me because he was, doing a country kind of voice and singing with an acoustic.
I just don't like the sound of an acoustic guitar. It's just like so.
It has motivated me. Now, I was already motivated when I was in prison to come out, get a rock band going, and to pursue that. Because I've got, from running for sheriff, I ended up with some interesting connections to like Metal Injection and Consequence of Sound and some other big name metal magazines that might be interested in an album by that person who ran for sheriff a few years ago that they interviewed on their podcast or for their magazine or whatever.
That's cool of them.
Yeah, so I don't know that they would do it, but I might be able to parlay that into some amount of press, But I was already motivated to do that. Plus, it did not escape my notice that I built this entire music studio and then I immediately stopped making music because I was depressed and anxious and I had this huge dark cloud over me. So I was already motivated to get out here, get a rock band going, and start making music again. Not liberty-oriented rock music, though. I mean, certainly I'm a libertarian, and I'm not going to have someone on a microphone singing about how much they love the government. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like a lot of libertarianism, a lot of libertarian things go wrong by putting the libertarianism first and foremost.
Yeah, like I have to say, maybe I won't say what event this was, but there was an event I was at where there was a DJ and he was singing stuff like, everyone now say, I hate the state, I hate the state. And I was just like, that's like actually
cringy.
Corny. Yeah, that's corny.
It's cringy, man. We don't need that. And you're not going, we have to reach out to normal people and invite them into libertarianism.
Like, don't you want to sing about like love?
Yeah,
more
right?
than that.
Or sing about anything, but the fact that you're a libertarian, it's going to come out in any sort of art that you create anyway. The book that I'm writing, Strange is Relative, is the working title of it. It's actually about a trans woman who gets sent to a men's prison. And it's based on me and my life in the same way that Pet Sematary is based on Stephen King's life. Like, it's fiction, it's completely made up, but it has some things I can draw from experiences in order to write it. Like, Stephen King obviously never had his son die and never buried him in a pet cemetery, and then I actually didn't finish that book because it got so boring.
Oh, I never read it and I've never seen the movie.
Yeah. I've been meaning to watch the movie because I'm hoping that's going to be better. But so obviously those things never actually happened to Stephen King, but it gave him the idea to write a book about it. So I have to write this forward because it's going to be, some people are loosely based on people I met in prison. Like, look, guys, don't come up to me in the streets of Keene and shoot me, right? Like, this is fictional. I'm making it clear it's fictional. It's not me. It's not you. It's fiction. Anyway, the reason I get into all of that is because I am a libertarian, but it's not going to be a libertarian book. However, the fact that I'm a libertarian, I'm not going to be able to hide that as I write the book, right? There's going to be conversations between inmates in this book about how wrong it is that they were incarcerated for this nonviolent crime.
That's really, really a good way to look at it, because it's like when you already understand the principles and everything, it's like your regular way of being is also just influencing people. Like when I go visit Ian at the prison, I start conversations with somebody at some point, because that's the biggest way to say F you to the guards, because they just don't like you, is to just be like smiling and happily talking to a person and being human and not being miserable like they want you to be.
You are going to love visiting Ian at the camp, by the way.
Is it way better?
Yeah, it is so much better. You don't have to deal with any of that. The guards are relatively friendly, and you get to go outside.
Yeah, he was telling me about the outdoor thing today. So, anyways, like, I don't, like, purposely start saying, like, of the state and all that stuff. I just have normal conversations with them, and most of them actually get it because of what they're going through with their family member.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, like, be so literal with things, and you can have a conversation that's just kind of like flavored, dang it, F the state. I didn't actually say it, did I?
You did not.
Okay.
I didn't even know if that's what you were going to say. I thought you were just going to say the word flavored again. But that's a really excellent way of putting it, is that you don't have to make people a libertarian beverage. Mm-hmm. You can make them a tea-flavored beverage with a dash of libertarianism in it. Mm-hmm. And if the beverage is good and they like it, then they will have just consumed a little bit of libertarianism without even knowing it. Mm-hmm. Like these characters in this book that I'm writing that are going to have this conversation about victimless crimes and how I didn't actually hurt anyone, but this guy committed identity fraud over here. Like, I just sold something that the government didn't want me to sell. That conversation is going to happen, and people might read that and say, yeah, you know what? I agree with that character on this. They didn't hurt anyone. They didn't do anything bad. They shouldn't be in prison. Whereas if I just blew libertarian philosophy at people throughout the entire book, only libertarians would read it. And they probably wouldn't even read it because it's about a trans character, and a lot of libertarians just aren't interested in that.
They might not even read it because, like, most people kind of get the idea and don't really just sit around reading books about it all the time. Like, I've never read Mises or Rothbard or any of that.
I've read some Rothbard. His book, Anatomy of the State, is a collection of other essays that he wrote, and it's really, really good. I would definitely recommend that one.
I have it in it's a really small little book, so I've been like, oh, I can read this. I'll read that, and then I can say I've read it. I've read an essay by him, and so I guess I have read something by him. I've never read one of his books. And the thing is, like, I've learned about libertarianism through Tom Woods, and he's knows all that inside and out, so why should I go, like, read it, especially at this point in my life?
That's the same reason that I've never read Ayn Rand.
Oh, I have.
Why would I read her when she basically just carbon copied everything that Nietzsche wrote? And I've already read Nietzsche.
I read Bastiat and Spooner. So why do I need anything else?
Yeah, really good points. I did read a lot of philosophy when I was in prison, but I would go through phases of topics that I was interested in. One week, I would only want to consume fiction. And then the next week, I was super interested in philosophy. And then the week after, I was super interested in trans books, which is awkward to receive trans books when you're in prison, just because of the nature thing. Like, everyone obviously knew I was trans, but it was weird to receive just this big book called Trans. And like, here you go, Aria. This is obviously for you.
Somebody was like, what is she like? Oh, trans.
Yeah. But
funny.
But a lot of them were really good books, and I did read a lot of philosophy. I played a lot of chess, mostly, and I'd forgotten that I loved some of these subjects. I got back into calculus because one of the phases I went through was studying physics again. So I ended up getting a bunch of physics books ordered, and they weren't like physics textbooks or anything. They were just overviews of physics by Brian Greene and Neil Tyson, who I hate, by the way, and he's an awful writer as well. He's good on television, but when talking about cosmology, but that's it. His book was terrible. Anyway, I read a lot of those, and I wanted to understand some of the finer points of the very complicated string theory. And so and luckily Brian Greene's really good about that, so he included a lot of footnotes about it, and I found out that I found that I was lost as I was examining this calculus.
And string theory is just, like, basically is that the one where it's like, oh, if you do something here, it's going to affect something you would think is unaffected? Or am I thinking of something else?
That's quantum entanglement, and it's related to string theory, definitely. String theory is the idea that, obviously this water bottle is made up of molecules, and those molecules are made up of atoms, and those atoms are made up of protons and neutrons, which are made up of up quarks and down quarks. Well, what makes up the up quarks and down quarks?
I've never even heard that.
The idea of string theory is that when you break everything down, you can keep getting smaller and smaller until finally what you find are these strings. And these vibrating strings vibrate at different frequencies, and they produce the different types of matter and energy that we encounter in our daily lives. So the universe in string theory is this giant orchestra, basically, full of countless little strings that are vibrating and producing the music that is existence and the universe. And there's a lot of really complicated math backing it up that is completely beyond me. I used to major in physics, though, and I got burned out on physics, and I stopped majoring in it, largely because of string theory and the fact that I was under the impression at the time that it was completely untestable, could never be tested even in theory, and to me, that's not science. However, if I had read this one book by Brian Greene, and I don't remember now what it was called, but if I had read that one book, I would have changed my mind on it, because I did change my mind in prison, and I find that now I do in fact agree with the string theory people. And I wanted to dive deeper into the math around it, and I was way over my head, so I had a calculus textbook sent to me, and I started going through that, and I remembered, oh my God, that's right. I love mathematics and calculus enough to have gotten pi tattooed on the back of my hand. And somewhere along the way, all of those interests had fallen away, right? The fact that I love to write. I used to write a blog every single day. That's how I got started doing the radio thing, was that Will Coley read one of my blogs.
Oh, wow.
And he wanted to have me on Call to Freedom to talk about it. And I used to play chess all the time and study calculus. I loved it. But life got in the way, and prison allowed me to pull away from life and to rekindle the love for all of these things that I had forgotten about over time. I'm not saying prison is good. Certainly not.
Well, the other thing is, I was saying this in my interview with Ricardo yesterday, a lot of people act like, oh, the bad time just started as soon as Ian went to jail. No, it's been 3 years.
Yeah, it started on March the 16th of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
That was when it started, and this is just a worsening of the bad times. I'm still trying to get the Free Talk Live show and the podcast on the federal prison system. I've not.
Are you a sneezer? If you're not, can you get close to one? I don't literally mean someone sneezing. Sneezer, as defined by marketing guru Seth Godin, is an opinion leader. When a sneezer mentions something, other people catch what Godin calls the idea virus. Seth Godin says some people are more likely to tell their friends about a great new idea. So identifying and courting sneezers is a key success factor for idea merchants. His book, Unleashing the Idea Virus, is the most downloaded ebook in history, and you can download the whole book free. That's how he's making his idea contagious. Click tips, tricks, and other stuff to help you cut through the clutter at www.survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Sally Patterson with a look back at some of the week's top stories. People in North America, India, Europe and other parts of the world sweltered under brutal heat waves this week, with meteorologists saying climate change is at least in part to blame. In New York City, the heat prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather became a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann reports.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe.
Meanwhile, India's health ministry said there have been at least 110 confirmed heatstroke deaths in the country since March. Weather experts say this year's summer season has been exceptionally harsh. Shiroshi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Government records show that India recorded over 40,000 suspected cases of heat stroke this summer. In the past week, Delhi's hospitals noted an uptick in the number of heat-related deaths. Health officials also observed that most patients brought in were people from poorer socioeconomic backgrounds who lived and worked in the open. Experts say that it is the poor that bear the cost of severe climate change since they have no protection against the unrelenting heat or biting cold. They say a prolonged summer like this one should be classified as a natural disaster.
On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dissolved his war cabinet, set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas on southern Israel, amid growing political turmoil as the fighting in Gaza continues. Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7 to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity.
US President Joe Biden this week outlined what he called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan allows around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the country. Biden spoke at the White House.
These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country.
And pop artist Justin Timberlake was arrested on Tuesday for allegedly driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. Timberlake has pleaded not guilty and is scheduled to be back in court next month. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Welcome back. It is Free Talk Live, our final segment from the Porcupine Freedom Festival. We will probably be recording another episode of the podcast later, and that may or may not end up being exclusive to our supporters on Patreon, because it would technically be a bonus episode, given that it's outside of the weekly schedule.
And it will have, well, should I say who it might have on it?
Yeah, of course.
It might have Nikki on it.
Yeah, and Nikki always is a fantastic person to talk with about things, and I know she was excited when I first mentioned it to her in prison to be on the podcast. So hopefully we can make that happen. Of course, she did recently have a baby several months ago when I was still in prison. She actually had it on the day of the not the solstice, what is
solar
it?
eclipse.
Yes, thank you.
Which is really, really cool. I saw her like a few hours before she had the baby, like not in labor or anything, and she was like, I've heard that eclipses can sometimes set off things and make women have babies. So and then like the next time I saw her, she's like, yeah, I had the baby a few hours later.
I just realized I forgot to do that shout out during my speech. Yesterday or the day before at PorcFest here. I gave a speech about being a year in federal prison, basically, and I meant to begin it out with a shout out to these people who visited me regularly when I was in prison, because Nikki, she did visit me quite a lot when I was in prison. Not necessarily every week, but about once every 2 weeks on average, I think is what it worked out to be.
One thing I've noticed about her, she has like a crazy amount of energy.
She does. She really does.
She's always like, oh, I just make my own this, that, and that. And I'm just like, I honestly buy a lot of those things, because it's like, how do you even have time to just stand around in the kitchen making this, that, that? She goes to like events. She goes to like the chiropractor. She like teaches classes. She's like doing all that pregnant too. She had a job.
We have to get better chairs for this studio. I'm realizing as I sit here longer and longer, and my rear is beginning to hurt. However, she is fantastic. She does have limitless energy, and among that energy, I mean, she visited me the like 2 days before she had the baby. As recently as that. Like, girl, you're about to pop. How do you have the energy to be here visiting me in federal prison?
I even said to her, because we were reading some article one day where it was like, everyone knows us as parents don't have time for anything. And I said to her, I was like, Nikki, I really think you're going to be one of those parents who doesn't have like a trashed house and be like, it's because I have kids. Oh, I can't do anything because I have kids. I just really don't think she will.
No, Nikki's very much on top of things, and she's always a delight to have on the show and a delight to be around. Terrific person, her and Matt both. I'm so honored to have been the one to perform their wedding ceremony last year.
I kind of forgot about that.
There were some issues with it, but that was not my fault. Like, the microphone I had kept cutting out, and what I learned after the ceremony was over was that someone had leaned against the mixer, and they had broken the cable that I had for the input that I was plugged into. So it kept shorting out and losing its connection. And I could have fixed it in 12 seconds by just going up to the Free Talk Live site, grabbing a different cable, and using that.
I just thought it was related to like the torrential downpour.
No, it was that something broke, and no one told me that they broke it, because, and I understand, right? You broke someone's stuff and you like feel bad about it, but it was like a tiny little cheap cable that
I don't understand. Like, I would be instantly like, what can I do to make this right?
Right. But it would have been very easy to fix. And as a result of that, Nikki's wedding got kind of, I don't want to say ruined, but it was tarnished by the bad audio and the microphone cutting in and out, and my inability to fix it because I couldn't identify what the issue was, because I was in the middle of doing a wedding ceremony. So that was unfortunate, but it was a beautiful wedding ceremony, and I'm honored to have been the one to do it, because Matt and Nikki are fantastic people, and they visited me a lot when I was in prison, and that just meant so much. Also, Matt, the state rep in New Hampshire, visited me a couple of times in prison.
Oh yeah, he mentioned doing that.
And that was really cool as well. His brother also wrote me a couple of times. Like, his brother's a weird dude. And like, I say that with nothing but love for him, because he's awesome, and he's one of the funniest people I've ever met.
I've only met him once, and I liked him, but I don't know him well at all.
At my new place, he came over to put in a new ceiling fan for me, because we discovered the previous one didn't work. And he's sitting there, he's reading the instructions, and it says something to the effect of, if you need to use these things, I don't remember what they were called, use them to secure it. And he goes, okay, not included. Great. We don't need them then. And like, just, he had installed one ceiling fan before, so neither of us knew what we were doing, and he's just so funny. Tremendously great guy. He wrote me several letters when I was in there, and among running jokes we have is that we always call each other by the incorrect name. I've been everything from areola to auricula to Amy. What? As long as it starts with an A, that's what he's going to call me. He actually called me A-frame when
he did go to Ian's trial.
Yeah, when he came to visit me for the ceiling fan thing, that was when he called me A-frame, and I was like, "That's messed up, man. That's my prosecutor."
Yeah, that's funny because it's the prosecutor of the Crypto 6.
Yeah, he goes, no one in the world is named A-frame, and I was like, "Well, it's A-frame, but it's spelled A-frame," and yeah, they are.
Oh, I thought he did it on purpose.
No, he did not.
It's not like they go up there and say like, "I am Seth A-frame" or whatever. Like he probably didn't know.
But he's a fantastic dude. Among the things he sent me, though, he sent me a can of beets, but not the can, just the wrapper part of it. Like, he wrote a letter about how much he was loving these beets that he bought from Walmart, I guess, because they were great value brand. And he took the wrapper off the can and he included in his letter to me.
Were they pickled? Because those are awesome.
I don't recall.
I mean,
at this point.
they're both awesome. They're awesome if they're not pickled.
I had another friend that I play practical jokes with, and we're constantly joking with one another because humor defines like 90% of my existence. If it's not funny, I'm probably not interested in it. And we had the idea of writing James Joyce style letters to one another while I was in prison. There's nothing going on between me and this guy. We almost dated at one point, but
I don't even know what James Joyce is.
James Joyce was a really, really good poet, but he was really, really raunchy, and he loved women's rears, and he wrote some pretty detailed and specific letters to some of the women he dated about how much he loved their farts.
Oh, I thought that was like Benjamin Franklin or something.
No, it was James Joyce. And that's what we were going to do because the BOP has to read all of these letters. So we were going to go into extensive detail about how much we loved the other's farts. It didn't end up working out that way. We sent each other other nonsense. For example, at one point, a friend of mine said the joke, "What is Stalin's child's favorite food?" Ha ha, dictator tots. So I got out a sheet of paper and I wrote down the joke, the question, and I dropped it in the mail and I sent it to him. And then like 3 weeks later, I sent the punchline. I wanted to wait longer than that. I wanted to wait until I was out of prison and like send it 2 or 3 years from now. But by then I would have forgotten about it. I almost forgot about it just in 3 weeks. He wrote me a letter and he used industrial adhesive spray glue to seal the letter up and stuff it into the envelope and just glued the entire thing into it, and it was a mess.
I'm surprised that they let all that happen because that definitely is not allowed in the low security.
Oh, it wasn't allowed to happen.
Oh.
I received a notice one day that I had received a letter from this person, but they weren't allowing me to receive it because they were unable to open it without destroying it.
Okay, I was like, what the heck?
So I sent him a letter explaining that's what happened, and his next letter to me was a picture of him having to open his own stupid letter and deal with all of the glue that he had put in there because the BOP wouldn't let me do it. And so he sent me pictures of that process, and it was glorious to me that he tried to play this joke on me, and he ended up playing it on himself.
Yeah.
So that was great. And little things like that really helped me a lot when I was in prison. And I'm really glad to hear that Ian is in the camp now because it does have its downsides. I mean, come August, it's going to be brutally hot in there. But I know Ian,
it is hot in there, he said.
I believe it. But I know Ian can adapt to it. Ian can handle it. And there's unlimited showers for the most part. And he can take as many cold showers as he wants. I think the Wim Hof method that I did during the summer did help me a lot.
So it does get cold? Because in the low, he was saying it didn't really get cold.
You mean during the winter?
No, like he was saying that the water is just basically always hot.
Oh, no, the water can get cold
Nice.
in the camp. Yeah, definitely. And I was able to take some completely ice-cold showers, and it was great. And I think that helped me deal with the heat. But the heat there, it is miserable. And the first few times it reaches 80 degrees, they lock you down inside and they close outdoors.
That's so stupid.
It is because
it's obviously hotter inside.
It's so much hotter inside because it's just this tin can that is sitting out in the sun just getting hotter and hotter.
That's so stupid. Well, as far as I don't think I've updated about Ian, basically he has a friend from the county jail in there. He already has met other people that he likes. He said everyone's really cool, and he's been walking around, and he said the food's way better.
The food is so much better, and that I'm glad that he gets to experience that. Hopefully, if he wants, he can get a job working in the PM kitchen crew. He should talk to CEO Silva about that and be like, hey, I'm Arya's co-defendant. I want to, take over from where Arya was, because that spot's almost certainly still available. And there's so many perks to working in the kitchen. You have to have a job when you're at the camp. Now, some people get a job as an orderly, which is a cleaner, basically, and then they just don't do it, and that's fine. But it helps your time go by faster to have a job.
Yeah, Ian doesn't like the idea of working for free, but I think that he would, like, if he got something that, like, helps himself out, like cleaning the place he lives, he would do a good job at it, and it would make time go by.
Well, it's not for free. You do technically get paid, but not much. By the end of my tenure as a cook, I was making, I think, about $50 per month. Now, as an orderly, I was making $4 per month. But even the lowest paying job still technically pays you something each month. But the real reason to work in the kitchen isn't for the wages, non-existent though they are. It's for the fact that you can make food as you like it, and you can get food out of the kitchen, and you can eat as much of it as you want. You can go there at 3 o'clock for short line, and then you can come back again at main line and finish filling up if you want. So there's a lot of perks to working in the kitchen that extend beyond just that basic pay, but they do offer some low pay. But you have to have a job at the camp either way. Some people do manage to go their entire time there without one, but most people end up having to get a job, and it kind of sucks, but I would recommend the kitchen over any of these other places because the BOP is sort of callous.
Maybe he'll learn how to cook.
I learned how to cook in prison. I was always a good cook, but I didn't know how to manage my time properly. Like if I wanted to make spaghetti, it was going to take me 5 hours to do it. Well, now I can spend 5 hours simmering a sauce and letting it get to perfection, but the spaghetti itself is going to take me about 30 minutes at the most. And that's because in prison, you have to learn to manage your time properly. And while this thing is going on, I'm going to dice these onions and these peppers and tomatoes. So you become really, really good at that, and now I can do those things.
Working in a kitchen also just helped me to remember, like, you have to put the ketchup up when you're done using it. You put this up after you're done using it because it's like you need that space.
Yep.
So I'm like just really efficient in the kitchen from working in one. Not in a prison, I'm just saying.
That's really good. I wish I had been there cooking still while Ian was there because I make a really, really good jerk tofu. I learned how to make jerk sauce in prison. And this is one of the other reasons that I would suggest Ian get into the kitchen is because at the camp, you have a very wide berth on what you can and can't do. They don't really care as long as you mostly make the menu.
I don't allow Ian to eat soy. Just kidding. He can eat whatever he wants.
I was going to say, well, that's pretty much, you can have soy and beans. Those are the vegetarian alternatives. But he could also just make the jerk sauce and put it on chicken.
Oh, I bet he would.
I
bet he would really like that.
Yeah, there is a recipe for jerk sauce there at the prison already that I wrote down. And I have to admit it, that my jerk sauce is better than the Jamaican restaurant in Keens.
Whoa.
It's significantly better.
Oh, their jerk sauce. I mean, like, I could see that, yours being better.
Yeah.
That one's not, like, gross or something. I really like it, but it's pretty simple.
It is. It's a New England version of jerk sauce, I think. And mine is like the straight up Caribbean version of jerk sauce with a lot of jalapenos. I want to make it with hotter peppers now that I'm free and I can do that. But I used a lot of jalapenos when I was in there. And that was Silva's running joke about me using jalapenos. Every time I cook something, he would tell people, well, the secret ingredient is jalapenos. Because they went into my bean burgers. They went into everything except like my white mushroom sauce. And I say I know how to make my own salad dressings now. Which a friend of mine made mayo, his own mayo, and I always thought that's so complicated. Why don't you just buy it from the store? And I would still say that because it's not like mayo is expensive or anything.
It takes time. Yeah, it's not really expensive. Yeah, that was one of the things that Nikki does herself. And I'm like, how do you have the energy and time for that? Like, I just buy an avocado oil-based one from the store.
I didn't know they made those. I'm going to have to check that out. I do make a mayo-less coleslaw that is really good. But it's basically just olive oil and cabbage and other miscellaneous stuff to make it coleslaw at that point. And I make my own salad dressings, and I vastly prefer my own salad dressings at this point because I can season them to the exact degree that I want them. I make a really good Italian dressing. I knew how to do none of this when I went to prison. Making my own salad dressing seemed like it was just this monumentally difficult task. It only takes a couple of minutes. olive oil, vinegar, some seasoning, some herbs. You're good to go. That's your Italian dressing right there. And I'm grateful that I was able to work on these skills when I was in prison. I had no idea how to make a jerk sauce. There was a Moosewood cookbook, 2 of them, in the facility that belonged to Dale, who is almost certainly still there, and Ian's almost certainly met him at this point. He's a really good guy. One of the people who he ran this mercenary company. He was the person who sold bombs that they put me next to.
Whoa.
Right, because that's what you want to do. You want to put the anarchist right next to the guy who is here for selling bombs, basically.
I'm surprised he's just in a camp.
Well, selling guns and bombs is not a violent act. Using them is.
I'm just saying, like, from the government's perspective, I would think that they would be like, no, that's really, 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 really bad.
Well, to be fair, he wasn't actually there for selling bombs. He owned a company that sold bombs as a contractor to, I think, to other countries like Ukraine on behalf of the U.S. government. So kind of shady stuff there, sort of mercenary, but whatever. He's actually there for wire fraud, some sort of housing scheme, and I don't know the specifics, but that's why he's there. Anyway, he's got these Moosewood restaurant cookbooks, and that's where the jerk sauce recipe came from. I modified it a little bit, and these other recipes that I ended up making came from, and I'm really happy that I could develop these skills while I was in prison. I became better at meditating because I did it for 30 minutes every night, and I wrote my friend Annie every single night. I missed 2 nights the entire time I was there. And like I would just start a letter to her and I would write it across 5 or 6 days and then I would just mail it.
I started doing that with Ian because it's like it got really annoying where I was like, oh, I want to tell Ian, oh, he's in jail. So I couldn't text him at first. So I just had like a little list of things that I thought of and I made that into like one letter, and then once it got full I would send it.
Yeah, that was exactly this. And I realized after a few months of doing it that it was a diary to me, really. I was writing Annie, yes, and I would refer to her as you and stuff like that as I was speaking, but it was primarily a journal. It was a way that I was using to collect my thoughts after each day and to reflect on things and figure out, well, this is what I liked about this experience and this is what I didn't like about that experience. And I learned to do that in prison accidentally, but taking that time out of each day, just 15 to 20 minutes to write a quick diary entry, it allows you to truly process some of the events of that day and to have insights I otherwise would not have had. And I can't think of an example right now off the top of my head, but there were a few occasions where she had mentioned something to me and I didn't directly respond to it in email because we were talking about other matters as well and we focused on those, but it sat in the back of my mind and I would end up with this unique insight after it, just sort of sat in my head for 12 hours and I was sitting there quietly listening to music, writing this letter. I would highly advise anyone, in prison or not, to begin a journal. Now, you don't want to write too much in this diary. Inmates are really good at respecting your privacy, especially there at the camp. But do it in a letter form and mail it out to someone periodically if you're going to do that. And don't put anything incriminating in there. Obviously, if you have contraband or something, they don't read outgoing mail that you send from the camp. So you could mention to a friend of yours that you have...
Ian doesn't believe that.
They don't. And like I can attest to that. And he'll see it as well because once you seal it, you drop it directly into the mailbox yourself.
Oh, okay.
And at that point, it's no longer your mail. It's the person you're sending it to's mail. Now, the BOP is authorized to read all of your mail as the inmate, but they're not allowed to read your wife's mail or your husband's mail. And once you cross that threshold and you drop it in that box, it becomes your wife's mail or your husband's mail or your friend's mail.
Well, that makes a lot more sense if you're dropping it yourself because that wasn't happening at the low security.
Right. At the low, you hand them an unsealed envelope that's already stamped and stuff, right?
Yeah, for them to look through and then seal it and then send it off. So the last time I wrote a journal, it reminds me, I saw a UFO while you were in prison.
Really?
Yeah. Me and my sister together. So it's like great that happened with both of us so it wasn't just like only me. Basically what happened, I haven't told the story on the air, is a light, somewhat like a cross, appeared in the sky. Not flew into the view, appeared in the sky. And we were both like speechless and just pointing. And we're like saying, what is that? And then we started to run and then it like lowered itself onto the ground. But the ground was far, like at least a mile away. And we ran and like my sister got way ahead of me because I was wearing flip-flops. And she said when she ran as far as she could go because it's like a cul-de-sac. She saw a bunch of flashes from the ground, like flashes of light from the ground, but then it ended.
Wow.
It was really weird. And it was like such a bright white light, and the whole cross-shaped thing was light. It's not like it was a craft with lights on it.
So you
like
ended
a
up
light bulb.
writing a diary journal entry about that experience?
Yeah. I was like, I'm going
Okay.
to write this down so I have a fresh memory and it doesn't keep changing. So
Yeah.
I have that.
That's also a really good reason to keep a diary or a journal, if you'd rather not call it a diary, but that's ultimately what it is, to keep track of things that have happened. Like maybe you're misremembering something that happened 6 months ago. Well, you
'Cause
can
I
go
do
back
that.
and check. We all do that. And and there have been many times that I was so sure I remembered something correctly and that someone else was remembering it incorrectly.
Yeah.
And they would prove me wrong. I'm like, no, I realize you have this proof, but I'm still right because I know what my memory says.
That has happened to me a lot of times at this point where I like ended up getting proven that I was like actually wrong and I was so sure that I was right. The other thing is I almost don't trust my senses that well at all anymore because anytime me and Ian would be together and we'd hear noise and we're like, what was that? I'd be like, it's coming from that way. And he'd be like, no, it's coming from that way. And he always ends up right. It's like I just don't have good hearing or something.
Ian has super hearing as well, right? Like I don't know how his ears are so sensitive, but he would hear the tiniest little background blip while we're doing the show. And it's like, how do you even hear that, man? Plus, like, we're broadcasting over radio. There's zero chance that people can hear that over the background static affiliated with radio programming. But like, how do you even hear it? It was shocking. And his mind for remembering radio specific details was equally impressive. Like, you could just name some city and he would be able to tell you what radio stations are there.
He basically
that's crazy.
He basically knows every area code and zip code.
Yeah, he does.
Just like there's like a savant that's supposed to like be super impressive because of that. It's like, wow, he can tell you every city if you just have to give him the zip code. Wow, I've seen it on TV, and Ian is that way, just
he can tell
chilling.
you. Yep, and in that zip code, he can tell you what radio stations are there, what their call signs are, and it's wild.
Like WKBK or something.
Yep, it's very impressive. Well, I'm happy he's at the camp, and I know he's going to get along well with people. You mentioned that a lot of people are going to find out about him to make sure he's a chomo. The good news is...
Make sure he's not a chomo.
Right. Is that what I said?
I think you said make sure he's a chomo. I don't know.
Yeah, sorry. Even Ian, obviously not a chomo. However, there are no chomos at the camp.
Okay, good.
They're simply not allowed there. One of the things that prohibits you from being there is a sexual offense.
Okay, cool.
So thank goodness for that.
I just knew at the low that was always like people want, like I had to send him an article and his charges, like the jury verdict, so that way he could show people, because they were like, you can sit with us temporarily, but you got to get that to us.
They want your sentencing transcript usually, and that's to prove that you're not a snitch, that sort of thing, and that you're obviously not a chomo. So that's fantastic. He won't be asked for his papers at the camp, I don't think, because people just sort of take each other's word for it. But it's good that he has those in case someone does ask him. There is one table in the dining room that you're allowed to sit at if you have good papers, if you have good paperwork. And Ian will have fantastic paperwork. There's nothing about him obviously taking a 5K1C or a plea deal or any of that nonsense. I mean, he went to trial, and you don't get better paperwork than that.
And it wasn't like about like killing people or hurting children or something.
So he should be able to sit at that table. I would have been able to sit at that table too, but I never did because it was more convenient where I was sitting at. But it's an elite table, and if your paperwork's not good, you're not allowed to be there. I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm envious of Ian for getting to meet some of these awesome people who I know are there at the camp. But I do miss those awesome people, and I'm glad that I know that as of now at least, Ian has some awesome people he can associate with there.
I think that they definitely purposely separated you guys.
I think so as well. But it's been awesome from here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. We'll be here again next year, and we'll be live again tomorrow night, so stay tuned for that. It is Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. I have a license. That means you're protected. That's nonsense. Just because somebody has a license doesn't mean anything about their business acumen. It doesn't mean anything about their ability to satisfy their customers.
It essentially means that they paid the state money.
And
that's
jumped through
it.
the hoops. Yep.
And filled out some paperwork.
Exactly. And that's all that the license means. But yet it has this aura of legitimacy to it. Oh, it's a license. And they paid some money to the state, and so therefore they must be a good company. It's absurd.
And absolutely. And what it does is it depletes the pool of people out there that would be doing business in that particular way. You know, they just can't get up